Yo, what's going on, everybody? We are coming at you live for a late night first look. And this time we're talking about UFC Vegas 96. It's going down, of course, at the Apex Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. And it's headlined by Gerald, the killer gorilla Cannonier. He's taking on the fighting nerd, Caio Borralho, the natural, one of the representatives of this team that's been taking the UFC by storm from Brazil. He called for this matchup. He said, "Let's find out who's the scariest motherfucker in the division." And now we're going to find out. We're going to get our answer on Saturday. And also, the reason that we're coming at you late night, if you guys aren't aware, this is the end of The Ultimate Fighter. And The Ultimate Fighter used to be a show that was appointment viewing for every UFC fan. But now, if you're a UFC capper like me, there's a handful of nights a year where they just spring things on you like Road to the UFC. Like The Ultimate Fighter, these kind of sideshow tournaments that they've got going on. And they're like, now we're ready to show you on the main card. We're ready to show you in the UFC on a big stage. And it's normally the finals. It's normally a meaningful fight, right? The end of a contest. That's what we're getting. We're getting a couple of Ultimate Fighter finales. We've got one in the 145-pound division as well as the middleweight division. So I'm excited to see how those shake out now that I've watched the show. But it took me some time, right? I'm not watched all season. So now I had to go through and check in with each and every one of these fights before we got on the air. So now I feel like I've got a decent grasp on The Ultimate Fighter and where we're at with that show. And I'm excited to break it down. We got the sharpest chat in the game rocking with us. And we've also got today on the show a special guest, somebody that doesn't always make it on for our first look, but the Jewish better, nobody better in the building for the first look this week. I'm excited to break it down with a guest. How you guys feeling, including my guy Jewish better? How you feeling, most importantly, my brother?
Well, thank you for having me, bro, and appreciate everybody else who's watching as well. Thank you for being here. There's a lot of MMA shows out there, and appreciate you for watching this one specifically, whether it be right now or later on. If you're watching this back, we're going to here to give you the bets on this card. Maybe not the bets, but at least our first look, right? And that's it.
Exactly. So if you guys are unaware, unfamiliar, welcome aboard. First and foremost, want to say thank you guys for choosing to watch the show tonight. I want to say what we're going to do today and what we're not going to do today. I'm not going to come out and say, this is the winner. I've got this on lock. Because I'm honestly just getting around to some of these fights. I was at a Yankees game with my father last night. If you guys are not aware, that game went into deep extra innings. We're talking about late into the evening. So it's not like I had a ton of time. I also had Contender Series going on. I had a lot of write-ups, action, things like that on Contender Series. So wasn't my night in terms of underdog predictions, right? Chalk went 5-0 on Contender Series, but first fight of the night, called the club and sub to a T. Very happy about that. Very proud of that because I did a lot of research. And when the write-up comes through with every angle that you target on somebody, just hitting one after the other, that's something that you like to see. So for me, positives, negatives aside, I just have to get into this UFC card Wednesday and moving forward, right? I'm getting into it right now. And so I wanted to do that with my brother, the Jewish better. And if you guys are new, we start with the main event on the first look. So we're going to talk through this fight. We're going to give some thoughts, some opinions on both these fighters. But hey, if I do a little bit of research and the research tells me this is the right betting side, I'm not going to come to you later in the week and lie and say, I'm sticking with my guns. No, if I change my mind, I'm going to let you know that, right? If I'm presented with new information or information I forgot, things I didn't realize. So that's what I'm looking to do here is come back with good analysis, good information, and try and give you guys a first look at these fights from a top line perspective. And so number one, we've got Gerald Cannonier, a very seasoned, talented middleweight, a guy who's been in the top of this division for quite some time. And you look at the losses, I think that that's always where you start telling the real story of a fighter. Who did they lose to? Nasruddin Imavov, Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker in this division. Just three names, and two of those are champions, right? Former champions within the division, guys that are still having a lot of success today. Obviously, we saw Israel Adesanya lose over the weekend. He's winning rounds off the current champion, Dricus du Plessis, right? Still to this day. So you look at a guy like Gerald Cannonier, and he lost to Israel Adesanya. He didn't get blown out of the water. It was a competitive, albeit pretty boring fight. Kind of just got neutralized in that one, never really left the starting blocks. Then you look at the Robert Whittaker fight. He had Robert Whittaker badly hurt in that fight. That was a back and forth war. They went to town on each other, and he also got, I believe, his arm broken in the first round of that fight. And much like a Danny Barlow, right, just finding a way to persevere, keep pushing. Obviously, didn't get the win. It's a lot different against a UFC champion than some guy on the Contender Series. So I think that when you're looking at how he's performed overall in the UFC, he's done a great job. However, when you want to start poking holes, the Nasruddin Imavov fight, right? That's a little bit of a drop off in class. Now you're not losing to UFC champions, you're losing to guys that are on the come up, talented guys, contenders in the division, no doubt about it, but maybe not the same ilk, right? Maybe you're slipping just a little bit in terms of your quality of contention. However, you look at the stoppage, it's a little bit premature. I think people felt that way at the time. Not to say that it couldn't have gotten worse. I thought that it was a fair stoppage, an eligible stoppage, but I thought that they were a little bit quick on the draw because he's an older fighter in the division. The thing that really gives me pause, though, is the Sean Strickland win that's kind of masquerading as a win, right? The Kelvin Gastelum win, he left no doubt about it. Marvin Vettori, he beat that man within an inch of his life. But Sean Strickland, I thought he lost that fight. You could say that I was a little bit of a bitter clinger, right? I had Sean Strickland on the night. I didn't think Sean Strickland went out there and put on a master class or something like I thought it was a 48-47 for Strickland. Thought it was a very close fight. So at the end of the day, he wins the split decision. No skin off your nose there. But you just look at that fight and you say, man, it was a really close fight. Another champion, right? Another UFC champion. And he actually got the win in that instance. So you look at the overall quality of competition. It's a pretty fantastic ledger. A lot of guys that have fought for the belt, guys that are fighting at the title level, Jack Hermanson, even David Branch. These are wins when he was a plus 250, plus 300 type underdog. So it's not like there's not proof of concept for him in this underdog position. It is just a question of what are you getting at this point in his career? He's a guy that started off late in MMA, period. And now you're looking at a guy who's coming into this fight off of a knockout loss. He is 40 years of age, clearly looks like a physical anomaly for a 40-year-old. However, he is out there, with a 40-year-old frame coming off a knockout. There's some questions that you have to ask about his durability moving forward, how that's going to look. He's been knocked out before at 205, at heavyweight, now in the middleweight division for the first time. I think those are all things you want to be weary of. However, you look at a guy who's basically a top 5 fighter, at worst a top 10 fighter over the last 3 to 5 years in this middleweight division, gone out there and proven it a lot of times against top guys, beating the shit out of them, right? And a lot of grapplers too, black belts, Jack Hermanson, these kind of guys that thought, hey, if I could get into the ground, things are going to be sweet for me. And then when they can't get the takedown, they're like, get me the hell out of here, right? So I think that there's a lot of different ways that this fight could play out. But on the Caio Borralho side, a guy I've been fascinated by since he got to the UFC, right? I've been making money on him since Contender Series, betting on him on the money line, betting on him to knock out Jesse Murray. No disrespect. I believe an Ohio guy, but just a guy that was a little bit in over his head, right? As that fight illustrated at the time, different points in their career. This is the guy who was going to points decisions in grappling with Jailton Almeida. And I was like, he's in the middleweight division. Like, this guy's going to have a ton of success. So for me, there's been a lot of bullish signals on Caio Borralho throughout his UFC career, and I rode that wave of enthusiasm. I've never bet against the guy. But this does seem like his hardest fight to date. He asked for it. It's not like he doesn't want it. He sees something in Jared Cannonier where he thinks he can go out there and get the jump on him. So maybe he's right? Maybe he thinks, hey, the chin's starting to compromise a little bit. I've got power on my strikes. I'm selective. I can go out there, pick my angles, go with the kicks to the face, go with my big left hook, try and find these opportunities to knock him out. But we know that he's had some competitive minutes on the feet in the UFC. We've seen him rely on those body locks, right? The back take, the body triangle, things to just ride out rounds and minutes when things got dicey on the feet. And I don't know that it's going to be as easy to consolidate positions on a muscle freak like Jared Cannonier, my brother from another. I'll kick it to you. How do you feel about this matchup? What do you see as the most important intangibles here? And do you have any early betting thoughts, betting leans? What are you feeling like on this fight?
Yeah, so I hear a lot. I mean, I hear you on the path to get to the ground. I think it's going to be hard to necessarily keep Jared Cannonier down and hold him there. I love that comment, by the way, Pepe Silva. Love it. Always, Cash Rican. My guys, appreciate you. Looking like Roy Nelson here. But in this fight, yeah, like I said, the path to the ground could be something for Caio Borralho here. But I don't think he's completely dead on the feet. I think what he's going to have to worry about from the Cannonier side is the leg kicks immediately are going to have to be a part of Cannonier's game plan, in my opinion, to slow the movement down of Caio Borralho. Borralho's got a nice in-and-out movement style, and we've seen, Caio has gone up against southpaws, and I think that leg kick could be there for Cannonier. I think the uppercuts up the middle, we've seen that in the Jack Hermanson fight. When you got guys that are trying to take takedowns on you, you got to throw, and you're a striker, at heart, you got to throw strikes up the middle to take that, at least give them something to think about. You're going to come in for this takedown. There's going to be some type of price of entry. And that's another thing he's good at. If you take a bad takedown attempt on the guy, he's going to sprawl. He's going to weigh on you. He's going to make things dirty. He's got nasty ground and pound as well. Chow cannot be in these fights, where we've seen him kind of just laying on bottom, right? We've seen that before from Caio Borralho. Go back to the Derek Brunson fight. Go back to a few of this guy's fights. Ground and pound is there. He is nasty with the elbows. They even got the towel thrown in, I think, on Derek Brunson after
7.5 units at -150. He
brother.
got a little bit hurt in the first round. I can't lie. My guy Derek Brunson comes out swinging hammers, right? Toasters on the feet. But when you look at how that fight was going to play out, I just thought the durability edge was
and cardio.
huge. And I was like, if he could survive, this is going to get so bad. And unfortunately, it did. Those elbows are nothing you want to be underneath.
I was there live for that one too, bro. Absolutely freaking vicious, bro. So like I said, Chow can't play on the bottom here. If he's going to be grappling, he's got to make sure he winds up on top. We've seen, Jared Cannonier in definitely compromised positions on the ground, specifically in the Derek Brunson fight. Yeah, he hurt him, but then he got him in some suspect positions on the ground. People got to remember that, though. Jared Cannonier's never been submitted. He's working with good guys at the MMA lab. I'm not sure if I remember the coach's name exactly, but he's definitely working his grappling, and it seems
John Crouch, right?
Thank you, brother. And he definitely seems to have been improving in that aspect. I don't think, Chow's had, success with takedowns before, but he's not necessarily one to force it. I think he's going to have to set it up with his striking here. And do we trust the durability of Cannonier, especially after the last time out, seeing him hurt by Vettori, seeing him hurt by Brunson at this old age? It's definitely something I'm cautious about. Do I think Chow's going to straight up ground and pound him on the ground? No. So if this gets to the mat, I think it's probably a sub. But I think there's chances for KO on the feet. I wouldn't count one or the other if I was on the Chow side. But I think generally when I look at both these fighters, I think one's fought the way better competition. I give that to Cannonier. Chow, I give the durability, the momentum, just the fighting nerds in general, all of that, popularity as well. I have to say it's a dog or pass, man. I do like Chow's setups on the takedowns as well. That's something he does very well. It's not going to just be Jack Hermanson, I'm shooting for the legs, desperate for the takedown. I think he's a little bit better, a little bit more well-rounded than a grappler like that. So probably the deserved favorite, but for me at this point, at the price it's currently sitting at, I think just if we throw out the durability and the real Jared Cannonier comes in here, I don't think he should be this big of an underdog at this price versus Caio Borralho, who's just not fought the level of competition. He's fighting Paul Craig, Mikhail Jacek, guys like that. This is just too big of a step up for me to be confident in him here in this spot.
Yeah, I largely agree with your sentiments. The one thing I do want to make sure we do is we don't oversell, like, that Caio hasn't fought anybody. I do think people have kind of made that claim this week. You look, Aaron Jeffrey, I think he could be a solid UFC guy. Obviously, he doesn't fight in the promotion, but I think he could be like a fine, mid-tier UFC, like middleweight, right? Like nothing special, right? Probably not a ranked guy, but a guy who could be fringe and hang around, win a couple fights, lose a couple fights, maybe not special, but fine win at the time. Jesse Murray, I think you could kind of write that one off. Gadzi Omar Gadziev was favored to win that fight, if my memory serves, and I bet Caio Borralho in that one. He surprised people there. Then he goes out against Armen Petrosyan, and he wasn't able to finish him, but he kind of laid out the blueprint, right? I had said before the Adolfo Vieira fight, I was like, there's a blueprint for going out there and taking us back, right? And we've kind of seen that laid to bear. Then you look at the fact, the Makhmud Muradov fight. Muradov is a guy that had a lot of hype at one time, right? He was known for being a guy that, had this, he signed with Mayweather and he's this guy. We should all take him really seriously. He was -700 against GM3 the night that GM3 upset him. So it's just, you look at these kind of guys, and a lot of them had some hype and then it was kind of sucked out of the building, right? Michal Oleksiejczuk, he's clearly past his UFC prime, and I don't really think that that's a great win, but he went out there and did what you're supposed to do, got the finish, made it look pretty clinical. And then you look at the Abus Magomedov fight. I mean, for all intents and purposes, that's what Sean Strickland got to win into a title fight opportunity, right? It's like that's a number one contenders type win for him. So I think you got to give Caio the same credit. Hey, you went out there, you got the win there. Do we think that Abus is like the next great fighter? No, but is he a solid enough guy? Yeah, he's a solid enough guy. And then you look at Paul Craig. Paul Craig is a good fighter, right? He went out there and is he having a ton of success in this middleweight division? No, it's still yet to be seen, right? Small sample size. But obviously, it was always going to be tough for him to transition, like a guard game against Caio Borralho. But Caio called the shot. He said, I'm going to go out here. I'm going to knock him out. And that's exactly what he did. But now 6-0 in the UFC, it is kind of where the rubber meets the road. Let's see when Jared Cannonier last fought specifically. So it was in June. Man, that is a really quick turnaround time off getting stopped. I do not like to see that.
For sure.
But also at 40 years of age, you have to just think like, how much time does he really have to dick around, right? It's like you don't really have that much time to wait on the outside. Caio versus Muradov was kind of close though. Fair enough. Is JB like me counting down the days for Yanel Ashmus versus Trevor Peek? Yes. Great fight. I think Jared is the much better striker, power, volume, ability to switch more fluidly. I think the fight is more of a pick'em.
He's fought 5 rounds too.
Yeah, very sharp guy. And we do have 5-round experience for Jared. Gone the distance as recently as June of last year, right? But think about the fact that he beat the absolute tar out of Marvin Vettori, and then he took a year off before he fought Nasruddin Imavov.
Didn't he have knee surgery too?
Yeah, because I was about to say he was supposed to fight Roman Dolidze, and he tore his MCL. He needed to get surgery, and that was what prevented that fight from moving forward. Right. So then I believe, and somebody can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong about this, but I believe I was reading earlier today that Jared Cannonier had said he was offered Kevin Holland in Denver, which was a few weeks back, and he had basically said, I'm too fat right now. So I don't know why the UFC was so anxious to get him back in the cage right after getting knocked out either against Kevin Holland, but that would have been at least like against, a smaller guy. And I think that in this case, it's like, putting him against Caio, I think could comfortably fight at 205 as well. So not sure that that's a great idea, but I definitely see what everybody's saying about price is too big, right? It's like a guy who's a great fighter, but timing is everything in mixed martial arts. And it is just tough for me to envision a 40-year-old, even a special athlete 40-year-old like Jared Cannonier beating a Caio Borralho right now, who's this confident, has this much momentum. But it's definitely, from a logical standpoint, the way I would get from a betting side, it's just, it's tough for me to see it. I'm a big Caio believer. But the one thing I will say is there's been a pattern that I've noticed, which is anybody who says something bad about Dricus du Plessis then gets slept in embarrassing fashion so he can dunk on them, right? And it's like Steve Erceg was like, he's a 6 out of 10. And then you see he's getting dunked on Dricus's Instagram story the day after. And I saw Caio Borralho basically say, I bet against this guy every fight. He's no good at anything. But he makes it work for him, and that's why he deserves respect. He finds a way to win. He's like, but I don't see like a lot of technical skill in these things. And I was like, oh no, Caio, this is the one thing that could jinx the fighting nerds, is if they talk about du Plessis, who just seems to have enough aura that if you say something bad about him right now, shit goes sideways for you. So Drake bet against him, and we've seen what's happened to him, right? Everything's just falling off in order. It's a tough sell. Shout out to everybody in the chat, though, guys. We got the sharpest chat in the game rocking with us live, and it's 1:34 local time. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Mark Schillingberg in the chat says, what's up, fellas? I'm effing shaking right now. First time playing online poker. Just smacked a royal flush plus 2 stacks. Incomplete disbelief. God bless you for it, my man. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. Glad to see you winning, my man. Tristan says, why would Jared take a fight if he's worried about damage? I think he's good to go health-wise because he's 40, my brother. He can't do this much longer. So he's literally got to get as many fights as he possibly can while he's still healthy, willing, able to do this, and the UFC will book him. And, and at a certain point, you can't do this no more. So he's basically got to just maximize his career opportunities. He's also still a guy that because of his notoriety, how many fights he's had at a big level, he's like 1 or 2 fights away from title shots at all times because he always says yes, right? Like if there's an opportunity and they need somebody, they'll call him, put him in for a backup, all those kind of things. How smart he is to admit he's betting on fights. What a genius. DDP mogged Caio. Drake curse is real. Absolutely. When Shab, Drake, and Chael Sonnen are on somebody, guys, just fucking sprint to the opposite direction or get the fuck out of the betting market because it's just not going to end well. That is what I call the dark triad. Mr. D says triad. African King cash for me. Pepe speaking facts. Absolutely. One of the sharpest in the game. So I think that overall, this is a fun fight. It's a good scrap. The line is probably inflated by the winning streak for Caio. Maybe a little bit of recency bias, but it's also just trying to price in. This is one question I'll pose back to you before we move on to the co-main event, my brother. Who is the best fighter on the mat that Jared Cannonier has fought in the UFC? Because in my opinion, there's two answers, maybe three answers that you could provide here. And,
I'm just going based off of memory. I would say Jack Hermanson.
I think in order, it is Glover Teixeira, followed by Jack Hermanson, followed by David Branch. And David Branch and Jack Hermanson, I'd say, are 1A and 1B. David Branch is a great jiu-jitsu player, but he got submitted by Jack Hermanson, so there's nothing you can fucking say. But hats off to Jack. I think if they ran that one 10 times, maybe it'd go different. But ultimately, dude, that seated katakatami is just a beast of a move, man. You see him
either, man.
He's literally done that to multiple black belts in the UFC. So it's clearly his good move. And he said he learned it at a Danaher seminar and never stopped using it. And God bless him for it, man. He's made a career off that move. But in any case, you look back, like those are the three best grapplers I would say that he's ever fought. And he's 2-1 against them, right? We saw him do very well against, Glover Teixeira in the sense he went to the decision, didn't get finished in that fight. And I think that when you look at this spot, it is an interesting question of like, can Caio be the first guy to submit him? That would be a huge feather in his cap, but it is pretty presumptuous, right? So for me, there's not a lot in the data that says he's going to submit him here, even against some guys that I would rate as way lesser on the ground or bigger liabilities, let's say. He hasn't been able to submit them, but you also have to assume he's making improvements all the time, right? He's a young guy and he's still out there fighting nerds. He says, like, I know my opponents. I try and implement the game plan that's going to get me the win. And I do think that against some opponents, it makes sense. Hey, don't try and tire yourself out getting the finish. Latch on to this guy. He can't do nothing about it. Hold on for the victory. Aljamain Sterling wore a UFC title, guys. Everybody bitched and complained. I cashed a plus 300, right? It's like sometimes it's just about get the win by any means necessary. And I do think that that's the path for Caio Borralho here is that he has every path, right? I would be surprised if Jared Cannonier submitted him, but I do think that he has the ability to knock him out. And we know that he could go out there and win a decision. So for me, that would be why I'd favor Caio. He's younger, right? He's a guy that comes in, as the younger fighter, right? And he also has, I think, 3 paths to victory compared to 2. But aside from that, it's like, Jared's a motherfucker. He's not a guy you want to sleep on. He's not a guy you want to lay huge prices against historically. He's done quite well as a dog. So Caio Borralho as a favorite, fantastic. Both these guys have produced in their odds range. Great fight.
Banger.
Next up, my man, it's a surprising co-main event, but it is the co-main event. It's Angela Overkill Hill taking on Baby Shark Dude. No, I'm not going to do it. We're taking on Tabatha Ricci. And man, this is a fight where Angela Hill is coming in at 39 years of age, but I would argue this. In her case, I think she's fighting the best she's ever fought in her career. I think that Angela Hill is a anomalous fighter in that way. She's 30 fights deep in her professional run, but she started off as basically a zero grappler. So now at 39 years of age in a division where people don't get knocked out very frequently, she's just doing much better because she can grapple at a higher level. She's much more confident because she can go out there and strike knowing if I get into a grappling exchange, it's not the end of me instantly. And that is a huge game changer, I feel, for Angela Hill. She doesn't spend as much time in negative positions. Now, is she taking on a credentialed grappler here? Yeah. Is she taking on a woman 10 years or junior? Absolutely. But does Angela Hill probably have better skills, on the feet? I think unquestionably. And I think that when this fight takes place at distance, she's got the length, she's got the speed, she's got, I would say, the power. So I think it's a tough fight for Ricci unless she's able to connect with big overhands or get to the top position. Now, I've always talked about the fact that Angela Hill used to take herself down. I don't think she's as guilty of that anymore. However, in her last fight, she pulled the guillotine, right? And one thing that can happen when you start pulling a guillotine, right, is her first submission win, is if you go out there and go for that guillotine again and then flat back yourself and then the person's on top and they're good at jiu-jitsu so they don't get guillotined. That could be the problem, right? So that's the danger, I feel, the downside But I think Angela Hill's been doing her best career fighting. What do you think about this one, my brother? Fun fight, interesting fight. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, my fault. I thought I might have had my mic muted, but I didn't. A lot of people out here are saying, parlay that over 2.5 this week, right? And when I hear that, I automatically look like, all right, how do I think there's possible ways that this fight could finish? Usually we don't tend to see knockouts at this level, right? Angela Hill, she's pretty durable. She has been knocked down before, but I don't think Ricci is the type of person to get her. We did see Angela Hill in her last fight pull off a submission. Congrats to my man, Pepe. I don't know if he's still in here, but he was the one to call that one, hit that one by guillotine. And I think she had a good opponent to do so against Luana Pinheiro, who's just a gas bag, was going to shoot.
I had fight not to go in the under at plus 330, plus 300. I was very happy with that one.
Easy money. And, a lot of people probably in that one were parlaying, women's MMA. We're going to just parlay the over. I think it's a possible way that Ricci maybe even finishes her on the mat, because we have seen Randa Marcos finish her via armbar. And when I do look at sub bets, I tend to look at proof of concept. She's been armbarred before. We look at Ricci's one career UFC win. It was via armbar versus Jessica Penne, who I believe is a training partner of Angela Hill as well. I don't know if that counts.
They host a podcast together called Two Straws.
Great point, my boy. But I just think it's possible. I think that armbar setup was really good for Ricci, the way she spun around on the armbar as well. There was no real slack in the armbar. She set it up right. Obviously, she has those judo tosses as well. We saw Dern was really able to out-physical her in that fight that she had. I could see Ricci, getting this fight to the ground at a certain point. Maybe she is losing on the feet. Maybe it's a close decision, but I tend to like the Ricci side. Obviously, we talked about the Walsh narrative, the power couple, right? But I believe he also has a fight coming up soon as well, so that's interesting to think about as well. But yeah, a lot of people think this fight's going to go to decision, so I generally look to be contrarian. When I look at ways this fight could end, it's probably by sub, and maybe I look at the ends by sub as well.
I think this is a really compelling fight, because when you look at it, I know people want to say, hey, Angela Hill can't buy a split decision win, and that's fair. But Lupita Godinez is not a streaking woman right now in this UFC division. She's 7-5 overall. She's lost her last 2 fights. She lost to Angela Hill. She lost to Luana Carolina. Right. And when you look back, she won a split decision over Tabatha Ricci. It was at the end of a 3-fight winning streak over Calvillo via split decision. Right. A very controversial one, if I remember correctly as well. Then Emily Ducote, right, who hasn't bought a win in the UFC. Right. Basically been lackluster. And I expected more from her. I'll just be frank. Right. I thought she was going to have a better career. Elise Reed, again, bottom of the barrel in the division, and then she beat Tabatha Ricci. So it wasn't that great of a win streak from Lupi, and she had bookend struggles on that, right? And Angela Hill beat her. So you look at that, and I'm like, okay, she lost to Lupi recently, so it's not like she's at the top of the women's divisions, right? She's still got a lot of learning to do. She still has a lot of improving to do. Tisha Pennington gets a split decision win over her. Tisha Pennington is definitely on the later stages of her career. She's had a tough time with the judges throughout her career, 11-7 career to the decision, and never been finished. So you look at Tisha Pennington, right? Basically just going to go to 50-50 decisions. That's the story of her career from the Ultimate Fighter to today. And now we're looking at the fact she beat Jillian Robertson. Pretty one note in terms of she goes out there to grapple, right? She goes out there. That's her whole intentionality. If you can't out grapple her, it's going to be a tough time for her to win the fight. If she can, she's going to dominate and look like a minus 1,100 favorite, right? Then you look at the Jessica Penne. Jessica Penne had problems with USADA and never looked the same physically, right? We don't have to get into it further than that, but I think that was the main culprit. And I think that when you look at that fight, hey, hats off to her. Went out there and got the win in the finish. It was a great spot for her. Polyana Viana, I bet her big in that fight. I'm glad she won it. It was one of the worst fights you'll ever watch, right? She's just standing above her. Polyana Viana accepted playing guard in that fight. And so she's just standing there kicking her in the leg, posturing. Again, happy to cash the ticket, but is that the kind of fighting that the UFC likes to promote for 15 minutes on television, man? Polyana Viana is finishable. We've seen that, right? People have gone out there and put it on her. This girl just was very happy to, pit pat, tip tap, a little bit of touch. I wasn't very impressed by that performance. Even in a win, I was like happy to get it, right? I thought it was a free win. I was like, she's not getting armbarred from guard by Polyana Viana. She's going to beat this girl. But again, I just didn't come away thinking like this girl's the future of the UFC. And, the Maria Oliveira fight, another forgettable performance, frankly. I think she got a couple of takedowns there. Not a staggering performance. Manon Fiorot looked like, the world's scariest fighter in the world when she was taking on Tabatha Ricci. I bet a quarter unit on Ricci. I was like, man, this girl's talented on the ground. Maybe she can mix it up with this French chick. Dude, she looked scared from the jump. She looked like she did not want to get hit at all in that fight. And she was tough, right? Tried to stick it out a little bit, but then just crumpled, right? And a lot of fighters have stuck it out the distance with Manon Fiorot. They've gotten boxed up a little bit. They've gotten pieced a little bit, but they don't look for the exit. She looked for the exit, man, and it was a little bit concerning there. So do I give her the pass, UFC debut, all those things? Absolutely. But split decision loss to Lupi, going out there and getting absolutely whomped by Manon. Getting whomped, we forgive. Kind of checking out and looking for the door, little bit of a red flag. Some of these other fights being kind of just gross, close decisions with the dregs of the division, again, not really inspiring. So I think that you look at an Angela Hill, she's gone very competitive with title challengers in the UFC, right? Kicked people in the face, gotten hurt really bad and come back in fights and made them very competitive. I thought she could have had a pretty decent argument to beat Amanda Lemos on the night. So this for me is like, a question of, are we just selling Angela Hill too short because she's 39 and because she has a ton of losses on her record? I think at this point in her career right now, she's a better fighter than Tabatha Ricci. Right? A more effective fighter. Doesn't mean she's going to get the decision. Sometimes that's the way it goes. But for me, I don't think that I'm sold on Tabatha Ricci right now. So I do think my guy Pepe makes a good point. They put Callum, the only boxer promoted by UFC, tickets up for sale this week. First UFC boxing event booked in Ireland, 9/20. Good notes for sure. I'll probably just end up passing on the fight, but I don't know. There's something about Ricci that doesn't pass the smell test for me. She's got some of the right elements, right? Marketable fighter, looks good on television. I understand all the reasons why they want to get behind her. The power couple dynamic, like you mentioned, but I also think they like Angela Hill. She's done a lot of solids for the company. They always promote her as like the first African-American, like fill in the blank for the UFC. Like she's just done a lot of things for them, main eventing, as a female as well. And I do think they like putting her in prominent positions. And she's a very marketable fighter. She can go out there and talk. She's a compelling, interesting character. So I think that there's, good merit to both women. Pepe saying he thinks Ricci will outgrapple Hill. I'll see what the tape tells me on that. I think that she has the potential to do it, right? I've talked about Angela Hill's deficiencies before, but I don't know that I'm sold on this one yet. Shout out to Vera Wera, says, I love when you have first look with a guest. Well, I'm glad that you're enjoying. I hope that you're rocking with us. I hope that you drop a like. If you're following along with us on YouTube, get subscribed to the channel because we're here talking fights each and every week from Contender Series to the UFC. And I think that there's a lot of fun action to break down. So without further ado, my man, why don't we kick it to this next fight on the card? We've got Ryan Loder and Robert Valentin. This is the Ultimate Fighter. Did you get a chance to watch the Ultimate Fighter, my man? The fights, particularly?
I did not get to watch some of these fights. I saw the Loder submission. It was pretty quick. That guy looked like he didn't have a fucking white belt in jiu-jitsu, bro. Like, whoa.
Can I tell you this too? The most disappointing part of that is they basically they show the camera angle, right? Of this guy going for a takedown. I've wrestled my whole life. The camera angle is so bad. I have no idea. And I've been wrestling since I was 12, right? I don't want to give the wrong impression, but like I've been wrestling for more of my life than I haven't been. And I don't know what takedown he got because the camera angle is so bad. Like I don't know what happened to get the fight from the feet to the ground. It's like just like a ball of energy. And then they're both on the ground and they showed the replay, right? And I still can't tell because the replay doesn't show anything more clearly. And I'm just like, okay, that's annoying. But in any case, he gets the takedown. They're on the ground. And yeah, you're right. There was zero resistance on the mat in that fight. He had like basically just passed right to the full mount. Seemed like a tough enough guy, but tough enough to just take some punches. Didn't really seem like he knew what he was doing. With all this due respect, please continue, bro.
Oh man. Uh and yeah, I think you got the arm triangle there, right? And then he out wrestled the other guy to a decision. What I've seen in some of his fights, he's a wrestler type guy. And interesting point. This guy fought Edmen Shahbazyan's brother, Leon Shahbazyan, and knocked him out via strikes. Imagine all fight week, you got to be around the guy who knocked out your brother. That's just awful. Maybe there's like a narrative there. Maybe Loder gets it done and Shahbazyan somehow gets finished as well. The Shahbazyan brothers go down. I don't know. But I like this Robert Valentin guy as well. He's violent. He's going to come forward. He's going to be aggressive. But I think when he does overextend, that does leave him open for takedowns, which is Loder's game. Loder doesn't necessarily have to finish. He could, just chain wrestle him here, stay on top. Very good positionally. Obviously, I haven't fought the best level of competition, but both these guys could be said as well. I have seen Valentin taken down. I'm going to look back to see what fight, if I can remember which fight it was in. I believe it was in the oh man, I don't want to misspeak here, but he fought this bald dude, and the bald dude was having wrestling success early in the first round, but then he just completely gassed out. I think Loder's gas tank's a little bit better. I think he's used to that grappling type pace, and man, I think it's kind of dog or pass here. I understand the Valentin love. I think he's a bit more of an exciting fighter, but wrestling's effective at the end of the day, and it's just something I'm going to have to keep looking into more into this fight, but I think there's a possible wrestling path for Loder. Obviously, Valentin's the favorite for a reason, so maybe with more research, I'll see why, but gonna have to look more into this one, man. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Yeah, so it's interesting because you have like the opposite perspectives of what I have, meaning like I haven't watched any of these guys' fights outside the UFC. So guys, if I come back to you with different takes based on what I see on the tape from there, please understand that all I've watched is The Ultimate Fighter, and I've watched it basically, the last like 4 hours. That's what I've been doing before this show. It's just going back watching episodes of The Ultimate Fighter, and I will tweet out. I started a thread, so if you're interested in this, I basically tweeted out my thoughts on each fight after each fight that I watched, and I'm going to do that for the episodes 10, 11, and 12, which I basically just ran into. I need to start the show, and I just finished watching these episodes. So I will get that up and finish the thread, but right now I have up until episode 9 already threaded out. And basically, when I look at this fight, first of all, the middleweight division was very interesting. You look at Robert Valentin, and I want to talk about each guy's path. So let me pull up the Tough 32 brackets, and this should be very telling. Okay. So right now, we'll start with the middleweight bracket, and we had Robert Valentin advance by taking on Yanis Bakar. Yanis Bakar, I believe, was the last pick on the show, and I don't think that he had, essentially any business being there. It was a very easy win, right? I didn't take a tremendous amount away from it, except to say that it was violent. He went with the elbow, took it behind his ear, put him down quickly, and I was just like, man, this guy is the kind of guy the UFC will look for, right? Just think about what is like the premise of Contender Series. Guys that go out there and look for quick finishes, look to be very exciting. That's what Dana White is looking for, right? That's what he wants to draft. If he was making the teams, that's what he'd be picking. So you see that and you're like, okay, he's the kind of guy that he likes. And then you see Paddy McCrory, right? The Irishman, Paddy McCrory, went out there and took on Mark Hume. Mark Hume, the much more experienced fighter. And honestly, what you saw in that fight is you saw a guy in Mark Hume win most of the minutes of the fight, right? I think it was like a 4-minute fight. He won most of the minutes, and then he got guillotined. And I've told people so many times, you do not have to be the better grappler to win by guillotine. That is like the reason why it's such a great move. He was getting out grappled off fight. Then the guy wanted a takedown real bad, put his head down. He said, okay, great. High elbow guillotine. Thanks for playing. Basically put him in a no-win position and switched the grip, got it tighter, got it higher, locked the leg down, put him out. So Hume was probably one of the favorites to win this competition, I have to assume, coming in. He had a pretty good record coming out of South Africa. And let's see what my guy said. Paddy McCrory is pretty fraudulent and overhyped. Hey, listen, I haven't watched any of his fights outside the Ultimate Fighter, but what I will say is he was losing every minute of that fight, and then he got the win, and it was fucking hype because it was Irish grit and guillotines, baby. What do I always say? We got a couple things in the bank, right? And he just stayed gritty, got the guillotine. What was interesting is that then you see his fight with Robert Valentin, and he had some success in that fight. They were both going out there. They're trading some shots on the feet. And he was basically, backing up, retreating, but he was finding a little bit of success with the left hook. He was finding a little bit of success with his kicks. And ultimately, he landed a big shot that kind of staggered Valentin. He got taken to the ground. And dude, that armbar was honestly insane. Like, it looked really gross. It looked really effective. He finished like basically it's like an armbar from the top side with his two legs. So if you can imagine what I'm talking about, like he torqued the shit out of his arm. I don't know if it's replicable. I don't know if McCrory is just like a bad grappler or what happened there, but it looked to me like it was a legit submission, just like a very weird one and maybe not easy to replicate. But while he was hurt, to have the wherewithal to like grab a hold of the guy, rip him to the ground, and then put him in an arm lock, it was kind of impressive to me. Again, it just shows his killer instinct. The guy is like yelling as soon as he wins, like very intense, angry, like psycho type vibes, for good or for bad, right? He just comes out with that kind of energy. But what's so fascinating is when you watch the show, it's juxtaposed with the fact he's like friendly with everybody. He's like coaching everybody. Like he's like cornering every one of his teammates. Basically, they all are like listening to him and not to the other people in the corner. I was like, holy shit, this is like this guy is like the coach, it's like, it just seemed like that's the role he kind of fell into. Everybody was like listening to him. And I believe after the first McCrory fight, he was like celebrating with this dude. So they were like kind of friendly and like all cool in the gang. And then they had to fight each other. So it was, a little bit awkward, right? I think that when you look at the Ryan Loder side, he's a guy that looks like bootleg Chris Weidman, right? If you were to ask me how to describe this guy, that's what he looks like to me, right? Does he look like as good a wrestler? Nope. Does he look like as potent a striker? Nope. But does he have the meat and potatoes that it takes to win cage fights? Seemingly he does, right? He went out there against Tom Theocaris. And like I said, that's the fight where he just got the takedown that you can't see on film and easily finished the guy, right? Then you look at the Amran Shaban fight, and frankly, like, I don't know if anybody told Amran the fight started. Like, the guy just kind of fought moving backwards, fought in reverse, didn't throw very much over the course of 15 minutes. Not true, my brother. Not true, brother Ben. He won a 3-round unanimous decision over Amran Shaban. But I'm talking about right now why Amran Shaban really didn't offer much resistance. If you look at the end of round 1, take down Ryan Loder, that's what won him the round. Honestly, it was very tepid, like no activity virtually. And then it was just, all right, I'm going to grab a hold of him. He started to work behind the jab a little bit in round 2. It wasn't a very exciting round, but I thought he probably won it. So I think he probably won a 30-27, but he did virtually nothing in round 3 until the end and started to just land a couple shots when his opponent was pushing forward, getting reckless. He was starting to counter a little bit with the boxing. He just doesn't blow me away in that fight. It kind of just was like the opposite of what Dana's looking to sign, right? Conservative, wrestle heavy, like thoughtful performance from the outside and don't take a lot of damage. But the one thing I will say is Dana seemed to respect him on the show. Dana seemed to like the fact that he just takes the path of least resistance on the format of the Ultimate Fighter, meaning like he's looking to get to the finals and he knows that he could beat all these guys. He asks all these guys. There's one interesting part that I would encourage people to go watch. If you only watch certain parts of the Ultimate Fighter, I would encourage you to watch this part where Dana interviews the guys before the semifinals and he asks them, who do you think you could fight and whatever. And it's funny because you get an inclination for who he wants to win, right? Because McCrory says to him, he's like, I'd like to fight Ryan Loder. He's like, I'm telling you, he's a wrestler. He's like, this guy's not taking me down. And if he's going to take me down, I'll get right back up and I'm going to knock him out. And then Dana puts him against the other guy. And I was like, oh, like he didn't want him to win. And you just look, there's kind of those tells based on that meeting, right? Where all the guys talk about who they want to fight and who they don't want to fight. And I do think that Ryan Loder got the easiest matchup, right? Which was that guy had been losing a bunch of minutes and his opponent went for some bootleg, like knee bar attempt, like fell over the top going for a horrible knee bar. And he was undersized. He's not a bad fighter, but he was way undersized. He used a ton of energy and then like basically blew the fight going for a knee bar and just got beaten up. It was a really bad set of decisions. And I felt like that guy was just an exploitable guy. He was big, he was long, he had some tools, but it just looked like he was a disaster waiting to happen on the mat. And to see him not go out there and get the finish, I was a little bit surprised by. So for me, I think that the guy who the UFC would probably prefer to win here is the Valentin side for a couple of reasons, which is he's the younger guy, right? A little bit closer to his athletic prime. I think he's 29 years of age. I think he was 28 during the filming of this show. Ryan Loder, 33 years of age. I think that when you look at, shout out to, they only do a 3-round if it's tied through 2, so it must have been a 29-28. I thought in the semifinals they did 3 rounds for both fights, even though the fights were not 29-28. But I could be wrong. Honestly, I don't even think they announced them with cards. Like I think they just say like this person won. And I'm pretty sure that it was 3 rounds for the semis, no matter what, but I could be wrong about that. So if I am, somebody please correct me, and I will happy to correct the record there. But for me, I felt like what we saw from these guys is, they both have different paths to winning, right? I don't think that Robert Valentin is like a great minute winner. I don't honestly think he cares about who wins decisions, right? He doesn't strike me as that guy. He's trying to go out there and kill this guy from minute 1 till the end. And I think he's going to have a chance. Looking at the record, I've never seen a finish loss, right? He lost a split decision, did Ryan Loder, but I honestly didn't see him take much resistance in his fights that he's had. And I think he's going to get that resistance in this fight, right? So I don't know who's going to win the fight. But for me, I'm definitely thinking that, Ryan Loder is not getting out of this one without somebody getting into some violent exchanges. I think he could probably be the better grappler here, but I have to look into their grappling more on the regional scene and get a better feel for it, because some of these fights are just so frantic that you don't get a great feel for like who's really the better fighter. You just see people make panicky, bad decisions a lot on The Ultimate Fighter, and guys that I thought were tough and offered some pretty good resistance in some of their quarterfinal fights. Right, we'll talk about in the next weight class, but you just saw guys like go out there and blow it in the semifinals that I think could have fought better fights. But in any case, for me, fun scrap. I'm curious, what are the odds here, my man? I know we have a virtual pick'em in the Angela Hill fight.
Yeah, we got some action that came in on the Loder side today. So it was like minus 180 before. So now it's minus 160 on the Valentin side, plus 140 for Loder.
Honestly, this market has moved all over the place. Opens plus 210 Loder on Bet Online, drops all the way to a minus 110 pick'em. So that means that got nuked. And then it went back up to plus 105, plus 135, plus 145. Now it's sitting at about plus 141. So this line is kind of bounced all over the place. Wow. Interesting line move. I'm curious to see how this one shakes out. But for me, let's look at the intangibles here before we move on to the next fight, because I'm trying to remember if there's like a huge height or reach disparity, anything like that, that would favor either guy. I know there's obviously the age disparity in favor of Valentin, and he's got more professional bouts. So I will just say, like, if it was minus 110, I would probably be forced to take Valentin or pass on the fight based on my fundamentals, right? A younger fighter with more professional bouts of experience. That is typically a system I tend to look towards. However, he is the favorite in this spot, right? So it doesn't really open up an easy opportunity there. And Tapology is being so slow that I am probably just going to.
I can't even find a reach for Loder.
Oh, here we go. I'm going to have to use UFC stats.
Yeah, they're both. He's 6'2". Valentin is, I think, the same height. Yeah, 6'2". Both of them are 6'2" at 185.
Okay, so we're looking at the same height, and then we're looking at
77-inch reach for Valentin. I can't find Loder.
Yeah. So. Oh my God. Even on UFC stats, they don't have a reach listed. So we'll get more information on this later in the week when these guys weigh in and do their measurables. I don't know how you could get through the Ultimate Fighter without having measurables, but there you go. Next up, my brother, let's talk about this featherweight scrap where we've got Cain Ofli taking on Mairon Santos. And let's see who the favorite is in this one. Wow. Is
Santos, right?
Is this line correct? Hold on.
Santos
it doesn't look like there's a
okay. So Santos,
an abundance of lines offering this fight. Is this fight off or something?
I see it on Bet Online and DraftKings.
It's on DraftKings. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm looking on fightodds.io, and they're only listing one book with this fight. So that's why I just wanted to make sure before we talked about it that was correct.
Okay.
Yeah, shout out to Ben. He thinks the semis are 3 rounds as well. I'm glad I was right about that. I think I'm right about that. Valentin is a pretty violent dude. Loder is a measured wrestler. I favor Valentin pretty heavy based on what I've seen. I tend to agree with you, but wrestling can win fights. It just got announced yesterday. Oh, interesting. It just got announced yesterday. That is because it just aired yesterday. I'm
So
now
they didn't want to
understanding the
give up.
situation.
They don't want to
Yeah,
give away who the winner is, right? Yeah.
cheers.
Kind of
Thanks to
sucks for
that.
me because I don't even know anything about either of these dudes. So I'll
No
leave this
problem.
one to you, bro.
Well, then I'm happy to take over on this one, my man. I'm surprised by the line. I'll just level with people off the rip. Now, I understand it from the sense that you've got a younger fighter in Mairon Santos. He's 24 years of age, so he could be making huge improvements over time. You look at the fact that, he's going to be the bigger fighter. He's 5'9", 72-inch reach. Don't know the reach on his opponent, but I could just tell you they're different sizes, right? And you could basically see in all of his fights, Ofli is a smaller guy for the most part. The thing about him, though, he's a pretty good wrestler, right? If I had to draw a comparison, I would say he's a much worse Volkanovski in terms of not Volkanovski city kickboxing Volkanovski, right? Late in his career, my man was out there on the outside, shifting, moving, combinations, low kicks. That's pound for pound Volkanovski. Volkanovski, when he got to the UFC, was rugby brute Volkanovski. Take your ass down, push you into the fence, get on top of you, do what he needed to. And the only difference I would say is this guy's a BJJ black belt. So at the time, Volk was just doing this as a horse, right? I'm a physical guy. I'm going to get on top of you. And when I do, it's a fucking problem. I'm going to punch your head in. This guy, Ofli, is like, I'm going to try and get on top of you, and I'm going to submit you. And I'm going to try and put you through the paces. I'm going to try and make you work really hard. If you get back up to your feet, I'll try and get on top of you again. I'll try and make you wrestle again. And the one thing is, we definitely saw Mairon Santos made to wrestle and made to work. If we go back to the Ultimate Fighter bracket, let's talk about the bracket, right? So first of all, we had Mairon Santos open up with a split decision against Edwin Cooper Jr. Guys, I wrote this up on Twitter. Again, if you guys want to go back and look, you can look at my specific thoughts on every matchup through the season up to season 9. But what I wrote up about that fight in particular was it seemed like Edwin Cooper Jr. self-immolated. And that's not a nice thing to say, but it just seemed like the case. Edwin was out there winning round 1, easy takedowns, getting on top of him, getting to his positions, threatening to put the boot in, throwing some short shots. And I don't know if he gassed out or panicked or just like forgot the game plan or what happened to him, man. But basically he fought 4.5 minutes of a great fight, and it looked like he just never did anything productive the rest of the way. He tried starting a box, like he's having all this success wrestling. He starts going boxing with the guy, getting beat up, getting landed on, getting backed up. His coaches were completely incensed by him, couldn't believe what they were seeing. They're like, please wrestle. They're like, make a choice. They're like, you have to make a choice right now. Make some choices. Like they're pleading with this guy to go out there and do anything. And he was like watching the fight pass him by, and too little, too late. So I thought that Mairon Santos was basically just handed a gift. Here, get on to the next round, kid. Like it was unbelievable. And again, he did everything he's supposed to. So it's not like he went out there and, flunked the test, right? He got taken down. He kept trying to work his way back up. The other guy got really tired and then quit on himself. It looked like to me, just didn't try to win the fight no more. And Mairon was touching him, finding his shots, picking away at him, landing, doing his thing. But it just didn't tell me like Mairon went out there and took it from the guy. I was just like, this guy went out there and gave it away. I was like, it was crazy. And his coaches couldn't believe it. So it felt like I was not just seeing things, right? It was like everybody on the team is like, don't let him win this round. And he's just like just deer in headlights, man. It was like all the success that he had early got to, it just froze him, where he was just like, now I don't know what to do. If I can't get this takedown, I don't know what to do. And he couldn't get the takedown, and he just stopped trying to do anything. And, it just broke his whole game. There's certain fighters like Frankie Edgar, when the takedowns are working, the striking's working, the wrestling's working, the clinch, when the takedowns are there, everything's there. You believe everything. He's getting you to do it. But when they're not, it's like, and you're just getting hit with huge shots up the middle, and you're just moving into them like they're, it's kind of like it either all works or it doesn't, right? And one little piece falling off kind of just throws the whole thing in out of whack. That's what happened in that fight. I feel like for Mairon Santos, he benefits from that, right? He goes on the next fight, he gets a unanimous decision over 37-year-old Guillermo Torres, who had already lost in the first round. So Guillermo Torres, he was the first pick for Team Grasso, which I thought was a mistake, right? He's a 37-year-old fighter. It's a tough sell, but he's from Mexico. He gets the pick, right? He lost to Rody Rowitz, who then ends up getting submitted in the semifinals in pretty short order as well. So for me, it just seemed like there was a little bit of beneficiary, things that went on for this guy, Mairon Santos, to make it here. So to see him at a 2-1 favorite clip is a little surprising to me. Now, like I said, big in size, strong guy, young kid, right? Definitely got a bright future. He's younger than I am, right? Gonna have a very bright future, but he's a young kid. He's a green guy in the sport, it seems like to me. And some of these fights were pretty nip tuck with, I thought, some of the lower end guys in this tournament, perhaps. Now let's talk about the other side, right? Cain Ofli goes out there against Nathan Fletcher. And this was the only fight I had seen all season on the Ultimate Fighter. I was at the casino. I was waiting for a ticket to cash. And I was like, you know what? Is that the Ultimate Fighter? And I see it just on at the bar. So I'm sitting there. I was like, okay. And I just sat there. I watched it. This is the only one I watched all season. So when I watched it take place, I was like, man, this Nathan Fletcher guy, it looks like he might have got him tired, right? He started to come on a little bit at the end of round one, but it just wasn't the case, right? This guy, Cain Ofli, was able to come back out and do the same thing in, in the second round and basically just put this guy through the grappling paces, get on top of him. And it seemed like that's where Nathan Fletcher, is comfortable, right? Because when they were on the feet, he was kind of getting banged up a little bit there too. He was taking some damage. He was getting backed up. And that's why I equated this guy to like a Volkanovski type. At the beginning, it wasn't about, flash and technique. It was about, I'm a fucking competitor, man. I'm a gamer, and I don't give a fuck if it's pretty or not. I'm going to punch you right in your face. I'm going to keep coming forward. I'm going to grab a hold of you, rip you to the ground. I'm going to get on top of you again. And so it's like he's got the BJJ black belt and the I don't give a fuck attitude. I'm not afraid of you trying to take me down because I could submit you if you want to play that game. And if not, like, I'm just going to walk you down with some impunity and throw some shots and grab a hold of you. And that's what it seemed like. He just kept pushing, kept going. And Fletcher tried to offer some resistance at various points, but just looked like he had, been overwhelmed. And frankly, in round one, it was remarkable to me that he didn't get finished. He got taken down, put into the full mount, beat up from the mount for a bit. And he kept showing like that he wanted to be there, right? Like turn sideways, try and bridge out, try and get back up. But this dude's giving him no reprieve. And then he gets to a base. He built up the turtle. And you'll love this, brother, because his coaches go flatten him out. And he just hips down into him, flattens him out, throwing some ground and pound, looking to finish the fight. Couldn't get it done. But then, like I said, after pursuing the finish in round one, comes back out in round two, more of the same, found a way to win the fight, found a way to keep getting the top position. When he would get on bottom, he'd work back up. Like he seemed to know where his bread is buttered in this game, and he's aggressive, wants to finish the fight. I like to see it. Then he comes out for the semifinals, and Rody Rowitz was somewhat impressive, I thought, in the first round of competition, right? My write-up for episode 1 about Rody Rowitz, I had said, both guys have big flaws. Rowitz is coachable, but he's looking outside the cage for advice. And dude, it's one thing where I look for natural fighters. I look for fighters that know what they're doing. And if their coach tells them something, I like a coachable fighter. I like a fighter that can be told do something and they do it. But I don't like a fighter that they have like a control position and they look over to their coach like, what should I do? Brother, hit him. It's a fucking fight. Like, fight him now. You're holding him. Do something fight-like. Do something fight productive. Either punch him in his face or take him to the ground and try and choke him. Like, what do we have to discuss at this point? You're in a good position. This guy is in a dominant rear waist cinch, looking over at his coach like, what should I do? What should I do? Like, fucking 10 times in a row. I was like, brother, don't do that, right? Just fucking keep fighting. You're doing great. Just keep fucking fighting. And while he's looking over at the side, he almost got rolling knee barred in the most embarrassing fashion. I was like, dude, please. Crazy to watch, because I really think he's got talent, and he just was not fighting up to his talent. He was a very nervous fighter, I felt. I believe he's got an Olympic wrestling pedigree, and he just was out there like good wrestling, right? Physical, strong guy, but he was just in his own head the whole time, and you can't be. You got to be in the fight. You got to be in the moment. So I think that was ultimately what held him back. He won the first round. Like I said, defeated the 37-year-old Guillermo Torres via unanimous decision there. Round 1 was easy for him, like dominant for him. He landed so many heavy knees. That guy at 37 has the chin on him, bro. He just took like square to the face over and over, clean knees. And he just was like no selling them. His coach was like, Alexa Grasso was like, lift your head, lift your head, lift your head. And he's just getting kneed in the face, not lifting his head at all. And I was like, this guy is made of steel. But ultimately, he just got, beat up. So then the Cain Ofli fight, I'm thinking to myself, like, this is going to be the fight of the season. Because I was like, we had seen 1 or 2 like pretty good fights, but I was like, these 2 guys seem like they know what they're doing. They can both grapple. BJJ black belt, Olympic wrestler. And dude, this guy takes him down. And it was like Davison Figueiredo, Alex Perez, right? It was like, I took you down. And then it's like, oh, that was a mistake by you. What did you think? You were going to take me down and it was going to be free? And the guy just turns in, guillotine, finished. I was like, well, that was anticlimactic, right? BJJ beats wrestling when BJJ is not on the wrestler's side, right? Like if you don't have some ability to go out there and make the right decisions in the grappling, go out there and put your head in the wrong spot against a BJJ black belt and find out. And that's what he did. And especially it's like, it's one thing if you're a BJJ guy against a striker, right? Because now I have to convince you to grapple. I have to get you into some sequences. I got to lock myself to you. We got to attach ourselves. Whereas if you want to come wrestle me and I want to do jiu-jitsu on you, it's like, thanks, buddy. Grab a hold of me, would you? I always say when I'm doing jiu-jitsu against wrestlers, here's my leg. Grab a hold of it, please. Let's find out. Meanwhile, if they're a jiu-jitsu guy, I'm like, let's wrestle, baby. Let's see who's got better cardio. Let's figure out who wants it better. It's all contextual, right? You got to be able to change for what opponent you have and what they're bringing. So for me, I saw Cain Ofli go out there and against one opponent who was strong, physical, and could have probably gotten some confidence if he's out there and not getting submitted quick in the grappling. He basically said, I'm going to put a threat so real that if you don't react properly, it's going to finish you right away. Finished him right away, right? And the alternative was this guy was going to say, fuck, I should not engage in the grappling again because if I do, it might be wraps for me right away. So that's the power of the guillotine. Right? How many times do we have to see it in these high-level fights where a guy uses it to keep somebody honest, right? And I think that we've seen it a lot of times now.
Dan Hooker just recently.
Exactly, brother. It's another great example, but it's one of how many, right? Dustin Poirier against Benoit Saint-Denis. If I can force you to respect my guillotine, you can't try and take me down for free, right? It's got to be a very calculated decision by you. And you were talking about imposing costs, right? Which strikes up the middle. Well, what about imposing the cost if you might get choked out? And if you don't, you might lose a lot of oxygen in this exchange. The guillotine, guys, I got out of it. Yeah. How many seconds did you not breathe? How much panic did you allow it to set into your heart thinking, I can't breathe? Even if it's for a split second, somebody starts to panic. That's what you want to have, as the reaction. You want to set that into somebody and make them say, hey, shit could go sideways for me at 1 second if I wrestle again. So I better be very careful. I better know that I'm getting this takedown with no resistance because otherwise my neck could be in danger. So I'm thinking to myself like, yo, Cain Ofli seems like a tough guy. Seems like a tough customer. I like his intensity. I like how he comes out prepared. I like how he seems like a guy who is the version of himself that he's going to be in the UFC today. Aggressive, wants to wrestle and grapple, not afraid to swing it out on the feet. Tough guy. So looking at his professional record, 11-2 as a pro, both those losses by decision, hasn't lost a fight since 2016. And he looked like the best guy on the show when I was watching it. So for me, I think he should be favored here. I'm surprised he's not. I'm going to wait and see what the domestics open that up and probably move from there. But I'm going to do more research, right? I haven't watched Mairon Santos outside the UFC. I haven't watched Cain Ofli outside the UFC. Definitely could change my mind upon further review, but I'm just surprised, right? I'll just leave it there. I'm surprised.
All right, I'll be looking into it for sure, but gotta clap.
But I think it's about size. I think it's about size if I had to guess, because again, Mairon Santos, young, big, a lot bigger, strong kid, gonna be looking to knock him out. But I didn't see a ton of knockout power, and I didn't see a lot of great grappling fundamentals. So
got you.
I think it's anybody's fight to win. Obviously, the younger guy, probably who the UFC is pulling for in this kind of division, but I just think that the guy who might be more ready out the box right now is Cain Ofli. And Mairon Santos, 14 fights at 24 years of age. I mean, simply nothing to sneeze at, right? But just a lot of negative grappling positions from what I was seeing. And the guys that weren't getting the takedowns, they were tired and not very good. That's what it looked like to me in these couple fights. So I think that this Cain Ofli guy is better and not going to get tired. So let's find out. I think it's a great fight. Oh, next up, my brother. Fun fight. Michael Morales taking on Neil Magny. And if you guys know anything about my betting breakdowns, if you guys know anything about my betting strategy, I'm not a big favorite guy, right? That's not typically the way that I approach mixed martial arts at all. But my favorite fade in the history of mixed martial arts has been Neil Magny. And it's because he's been a very profitable underdog for a lot of people. People have had, good success betting on this guy. And I can't say that I've picked his fights perfectly. Obviously, if you try and fade anybody, you'll find times where you get a little too overzealous, a little too bullish on the fade, where maybe you could have left well enough alone. But ultimately, I've made about 20 units of profit fading Neil Magny. And I've made like 140 units of profit betting on MMA, right? So it's like a lot of my success has been Neil Magny fights. And you look, I bet Michael Chiesa plus 118 against Neil Magny. I bet Max Griffin 2 units at plus 235 against Neil Magny. Y'all go back and watch that fight. Tell me it's a bad fucking bet. That was crazy. I thought they robbed him fucking blind. Close fight. He did end up getting power slammed on his head. Kind of goofy there, but he dropped Magny in round 1. It was a super close fight. And then I had 8 units on Shavkat Rakhmonov minus 400. Should have been 25 units. Should have just said, hey, what amount will you guys take at this casino? Okay, thanks. I'll be back in 15 minutes. And just put down the limit. But in any case, you look, and I had Shavkat by sub for many, many units, right? 4 units, I think 4.5 units, plus 300, plus 420, all over the gaff. I had Gilbert Burns by submission at plus 230 against Neil Magny. And I had said shark versus fish, right? It's just a guy that is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu shark against a fish in Neil Magny, a guy who can be submitted, who's been exploitable to the submission throughout his career, guys, 4 and 6 to the submission prop. That being said, I've found opportunities in the past, to get in on some basically plus EV opportunities on the Magny side. I bet Daniel Rodriguez via sub, very small against Magny, but I also bet Magny inside the distance at like plus 685. And it was like right before fight time, just because he's a welterweight, right? He's still a man. He's still going to go out there and attempt offense. And by the way, I think, he goes out there and gets the submission. Many people have tried. I don't think anybody else has succeeded there. So fascinating, right? But then Mike Malott is the one where it really fucked me up, because I was like, Mike Malott should go out there and clean up Neil Magny. And he did. This is the worst part of it. He did. And then he blew it. He just blew that fight, man. I don't know if there's another way to say it, right? Like, he was up. He's doing everything right. Then he's fishing for leg locks and playing off his back and, inviting him into the top guard. It was really, really stupid. No disrespect to Mike Malott, who's a pretty solid fighter, but it showed it's a guy that's won a lot of fights in round 1 and not many decisions, right? Because he just self-immolated in the 3rd round of that fight that he was doing very well. Michael Morales, for me, you know what fight ultimately sways me into thinking he's going to win this one? It's the fight that he had with Veretnikov on the Contender Series, because I just rewatched that because Veretnikov was fighting Danny Barlow. And if you watch that fight back, Veretnikov had some success in round 1. He came out and he was landing good shots, and Morales was surprised. He was like, yo, fuck, this guy is doing better than I thought. Like, this guy is way better than I expected. And Morales is throwing back. He's trying to get some respect. And it didn't seem like, he was having an easy time with him, right? He was kind of getting pushed around a little bit. And what we saw is Morales just adjusted everything perfectly in round 2. And he said, you know what? I'm bigger than this guy. I'm stronger than this guy. And I'm going to horse him the fuck around, and he can't do anything about it. And that's exactly what happened. Picked him up, turned him every which way but loose, was slamming him all over the gaff. And I thought that what we saw, is a guy in Neil Magny in Michael Morales, who can exert himself physically over his opponents. And honestly, at that time, I don't know if he knew any submissions, because brother, he should have He should have just grabbed a hold of that guy's neck. He was ready to quit at the end of round 2. He was ready to quit at the end of round 3. He had just realized, like, yo, this guy is more man than me right now. Like, he is throwing me to the ground. I cannot get up. I cannot do anything about this. He's beating me up with these shots. And it just was like Michael Morales asserting himself. That was a young man, right? That was a very, very young man out there asserting himself over a grown-ass man who was a pretty solid fighter and who just showed he could go out there and scrap with guys who we respect in the UFC today, right? At his age, 34 or whatever he is, he can still go out there and scrap right now today with active guys. 25 years of age for Michael Morales. He has an eternity of time left with the UFC. The UFC loves guys like Michael Morales because they could do business with him. They could keep him around forever. Neil Magny, they also love for a different reason. He does the job. He does the job when they need it. He goes out there, he takes every hard assignment, right? And so sometimes people underrate Neil Magny when he's taking on guys that aren't for real, right? Mike Malott. Unfortunately, he's a Canadian guy. And I don't mean that to be dismissive of him. I mean that to say, if he was not a Canadian male, the results that he's had, the career that he's had, would not have had the opportunities that he's had in all likelihood. But everything is about take as much that you can get when you can get it. He's a solid fighter. Guys, he used to fight at 145 back in the day. Now he's fighting at 170 pounds. He's clearly a slightly undersized guy for the division. He's been hurt in fights regionally, but he just finds a way to win. He's exciting. He goes out there. He was having a brawl on the feet with Mickey Gall, right? An absolute back and forth slobber knocker until he knocked him out. So he is a guy that can go out there and get some opportunities. But ultimately, against the top 15, top 25 guys, the rubbers always kind of meet the road for him there, right? That was the opportunity for him to get ranked. Can you get a better opportunity than late stage Neil Magny to get ranked when you're up 2.5 rounds? No. And he blew it. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. And hopefully, for his sake and his career, he can bounce back. But that's just calling a spade a spade. The Phil Rowe fight was a fucking nip-tuck split decision, and Phil Rowe is just some guy, right? In terms of the UFC, I'm not talking about me and Phil Rowe. Phil Rowe would whoop my ass. I'm talking about in the UFC, he's just some guy in the UFC. He's not a top 15 guy. He's not a guy that's on the radar of, he's about to fucking break through. He's not that. And he went to a split decision with Neil Magny. Very close. Very close. Could have went either way. They're like a mirror match for each other. There's no athletic upside with Phil Rowe. He's just a guy. He's just a guy who's pretty average at everything, if we're being fair, right? Like, he's got decent grappling, decent wrestling, decent striking. That's about, he's got power in his hands, right? He goes out there, he can finish a fight with his hands. That's about it, and he's going to split decisions with that guy. He fought Ian Gary. Ian Gary, didn't win any fans with that performance, but that was the easiest fight of his life. He's danced around the guy, kicked him in the leg, looking out to the punt him in the leg, move around. It was pretty easy, pretty free. He honestly beat the tar out of him by only throwing one strike. Didn't have to do very much. Didn't have to think outside the box. Didn't have to get very creative. Swing. Easy win for him. And I was just like, he could submit him at any point. Then he proves my point. How? Takes him down in round 3. Locks in the head and arm choke. Time's expired. Could have submitted him anytime he wanted. Guaranteed. If they go train together right now, Ian Gary submits him 10 times. I bet on that, right? Somebody wanted to take my side action. They go train. They go put in fucking 10 rounds in the blue basement, right? 6 minutes apiece. Ian Gary submitting that guy, 100%. It's not, it's not something that I doubt in my mind. So, okay, you look at that fight, and Ian Gary kind of let him off the hook. Gilbert Burns didn't, right? He's a top guy in the division, right? But frankly, an aged one, a guy, a former lightweight, absolutely did whatever he wanted to Neil Magny. Took him down, said, "Thank you for playing, sir." Passed any which way he wanted to. You know what fight tells you he was going to do that? Rafael dos Anjos. Rafael dos Anjos, former lightweight, right? The only thing that's held him back at welterweight is physicality. He got bullied in the clinch by Luque, right? Physical, big guy who could probably, go fight at 185 or whatever if he didn't want to cut weight no more. Missed weight for his backup fight and basically blew a title opportunity as a result. That Vicente Luque, that big guy. Yeah, he was able to outmuscle RDA. RDA was able to outmuscle this guy so easy. Take him down, pick him up, bing, boom, thank you, pass the guard, bing, bang, boom, head and arm choke. Thanks for playing. That's what it was like. Sit down, young man. Here, let me teach you something. That's what it was like. Old veteran lesson. So I just look at a guy like Neil Magny as a stepping stone for a lot of guys. A guy who's very talented and a guy who's made a career for himself by overachieving. But I don't think of him as a guy who, is supposed to beat a guy like Michael Morales. I think Michael Morales, this is them saying, hey, do you want to be a Mike Malott or do you want to be, a future UFC guy, right? Do you want to be a Shavkat Rakhmonov, right? And what did Shavkat do? If you remember that fight, dude, he babied him. He did whatever he wanted. What did he want to do that he didn't do? He said, sit down, pass the guard, took what he wanted. It was one of the easiest fights of his career, right? Did he meet resistance in that fight? No. He was too big, too strong, too physical. Did whatever he wanted. So for me, I look at a guy like this and I say to myself, if Michael Morales doesn't finish this fight, it's a problem for him in terms of where he's at right now. Because I look at the guys that he's been fighting, and let's go through the record. Michael Morales beats Jake Matthews via unanimous decision. Jake Matthews is a guy who's like an age contemporary, right? 29 years of age, right side of 30. He's had a ton of UFC fights, kind of a Neil Magny, if you will. But the difference is he's a BJJ black belt. He's not going to give you one easy like that. I think the guys that have submitted him, if we go back and look, Sean Brady, Anthony Rocco Martin, and he got finished by Kevin Lee and James Vick back in 2015, right? So when he was a kid, he got, finished a couple times at lightweight, and then he got finished by Anthony Rocco Martin and Sean Brady. I think they're both black belts themselves. I'd have to double check that, but they're both solid guys, right? So I don't think of him as like, some easy mark on the ground or something like that. It's a tough guy to go out there and submit. So, okay. A tough guy to knock out as well. I mean, think about, I think Semmelsberger dropped him, 3 times? He kept getting back up to his feet. You could hurt him, right? You could definitely land big shots on him, but he's a tough kid. He doesn't want to quit on himself out there. Max Griffin, another guy who is pretty goddamn tough. He's been finished 1 time, and I think he's had 30 professional fights. The one time he was finished, if we go back to that, was round 3, ground and pound against Colby Covington. And it was basically just like attrition, right? He just got gassed out, too much wrestling, too much pace. And Colby at the time was in the prime of his career. That was back in 2016. So, all right. I mean, hey, Max Griffin, another solid win. And you think back, Neil Magny and Max Griffin, how competitive was that fight? Like nip tuck, right? Super, super competitive. Michael Morales against Max Griffin. You had no questions who won the fight after the fight was concluded, right? Even Max Griffin was pretty sure he knew who won that fight after the fight, right? Adam Fugit. We've seen him being a tough guy out there. Does he have the greatest defense you've ever seen in the world? Nope, but he's a tough guy, tough customer. And we saw him go out there, his last fight, earn a split decision. He's got a couple wins now under his belt in the UFC. Morales was able to put him away, land the big shots, get him out of there. Trevin Giles, a guy who typically goes out there, has a good round with somebody, right? Maybe wins a round, wins 2 rounds. It's the things start to fall apart in round 2, round 3, when Giles gets extended in a lot of his fights. That's when things go sideways. I think Duplessis knocked him out in the second round. I think a couple guys submitted him in round 3 later in his career. Morales went out there, bing, bang, touch him up university, to quote Jamal Hill, and he took him to school early. So that was a impressive performance. And then, like I mentioned, the Varetnikov fight, where he asserted his physicality. He just said, hey, I lost round 1. I need rounds 2 and 3. No playing around here, and just got it to the ground and did what he needed to do. So ultimately, I think if somebody's taught him the jiu-jitsu, he could go out there and submit Neil Magny based on physicality, right? Like if he's got good training partners, if they've got a good game plan, that's, the simplest path to victory. Neil Magny's a tough guy, right? You don't want to try and pick at his chin all night. It took Santiago Ponzinibbio hitting him clean 1,000,000 times in the chin before he shut him down, right? He just poked at him with the jab all night, threw it. Neil is standing there taking them, right? He's a tough bastard. I think he could definitely get knocked out by a Morales who's got heavy hands, but what's the path of least resistance? Use physicality, throw this man around. He's kind of noodly and old. And, it's just like, it's one of the tough realities of the business, right? It's like, is Neil Magny going to not be noodly and old? No, he can't change that about himself. It's like, that's just what it is. And so we've seen other top welterweights in terms of guys on the come up on the right side of 30 that know how to grapple and they're strong and they're physical, just horse them to the ground and do whatever they want. So that for me is like, if I'm Morales' corner, I'm like, hey, dude, if you could pick up Nikolai Varetnikov, you could pick this guy up and slam him on his head. Get on top of him. Do whatever you want to him. Then wrap up a rear naked choke and let's be done with this. just a theory. How do you feel, brother?
Liam, are you the one that bet the sub prop all the way down to plus 500 on Bet Online? Is that you, by chance?
Nope. But I'm hoping people, don't steam it when it opens on other books. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about it, but there's a lot of people talking about, oh, why is the number that? Not just that. I've heard even people on certain podcasts say there's no way that Neil Magny gets submitted by Michael Morales, which I think is absolutely insane. Hearing your breakdown makes me feel good because I got parlays with Morales in it at minus 500. He's minus 800 now, so I think he has everything to beat Magny here, bro. I think the youth and the physicality and just the durability, the cardio is going to take him a long way here in this fight versus Magny, who's a good vet. But I think the Phil Rowe fight showed me everything that I need to know. He's going life and death with a guy like Phil Rowe. Not my favorite. Not my favorite look for Neil Magny there. So that's a good thing. And I had warned a few people this week that were interested in taking the 2-3 KO. I said just take 2-3 because Neil Magny is an absolute mark to the sub. I don't care if Michael Morales never got a sub before. I know this is a little bit different, but Izzy never got subbed, right? And he just got subbed this weekend, so it ain't out of the realm. And I think Marco Morales actually does have one sub via armbar, so it's not out of the realm completely. And as you said in the Varetnikov fight, he had some positions. Neil Magny, I think he's ready to get out of there via sub at any time, bro. At any time in the fight, especially if it's not going his way. I thought that arm. I know it's Gilbert Burns, bro, but that arm triangle, bro, that was quick, bro. It was. I believe he's a quick tapper. I believe if Morales wraps something up, he could get the job done. Like you said, even Ian Gary should have been able to get the job done via sub. Morales is what you said, 25. Like, think about the time of improvement from that Varetnikov fight. Was he going to go out there and submit Jake Matthews? Like you said, Jake Matthews is a legit black belt, I believe himself, if I'm not mistaken. Not only has he gotten submitted by, but he's actually a black belt himself. So, I don't know, man. I don't count it out. Do I think it's very likely? I don't know, because I think he's going to finish Neil Magny probably. I think the age is going to get there. I think this guy's going to absolutely bonk on Neil Magny, dunk on him any which way he wants. And I think this is a good step-up spot for Michael Morales. So I'll keep it short, sweet. I hope he wins because I got him in some parlays, and I'll be looking for some props as well. Maybe it's ITD, maybe it's sub, but I think he gets the finish. Probably it could come early, but I think it's 2 or 3.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Neil Magny is like a quick tapper or anything. I just think he's not very physical to prevent like getting put into submissions. Like he's just been a guy that can kind of get horsed into submission attempts pretty easy from guys in the top position. Once you're in him, it's like the long build and things like that. It can be very effective on the feet, but oftentimes it's a little bit more susceptible, right? And once it's on the ground, I find that longer type of opponents, if you could pass the guard, they could be a little bit easier to submit. They're hard to pass their guard, right? Because they have long limbs. They can kind of put a lot of things in front of you. But once you get past that, like then controlling longer levers like that can be a little bit easier. So it's just something to consider. I think that's like the underlying root of his problem, right? It's just like he's a guy that's kind of got these long, thin arms that makes it easy to wrap up chokes around your head and arm.
He's
right?
a super wet noodle, bro. Super wet noodle.
But in any case, the plus 500 or whatever on Bet Online, not great, but there's other lines, and I'm just going to wait and see what the market does overall. I think there's going to be a huge price disparity because, like you said, no proof of concept. And for me, that could create value, but it also, it needs to be the right number. So I'm happy to pass if it's not the right number, and if it is the right number, I'll get involved.
Yeah, I'm not sure about it yet. I'll have to think it over, but I do agree with you. I wouldn't necessarily just play the KO if the inside the distance is a similar price.
Now we move from a 12-year age gap at welterweight to a 10-year age gap at middleweight. We got Edmen Shahbazyan taking on Gerald GM3 Meerschaert. And I have to say, shout out to Gerald Meerschaert. Follows me on Twitter. Absolute man of the people is Gerald Meerschaert. And he's a guy that I've been cashing for a long time. Makhmud Muradov, I mentioned before, plus 550, I think it was, Gerald Meerschaert, plus 525, money line, something like this. And because I'm, straightforward, right? I didn't track that bet. The line had moved already by the time that I bet it, but it was like one of those things where, I was just seeing a huge price next to Gerald Meerschaert's name. And I was like, this guy's dangerous until round 3. If you don't kill him, if you don't knock him out, he's going to bring that pace, that energy. And if there's one thing he's always been underrated with, it's his striking, right? I think people talk about he's got a great guillotine, he's got an ability to come back and win in round 3. They don't talk about why. He's got big body kicks. That's a lot of the story, right? He's kind of that southpaw double attack. He's a little slow. He ain't very fast, but he hits hard, right? He kind of just winds up, right? Like it does those big thudding. I've been a pro fighter for 20 years. Wing, just like whack. There's nothing real clean looking about it, right? It doesn't look like the prettiest techniques you've ever seen, but Gerald Meerschaert could just whip that kick to the body. He could land those big shots, and he could start to tire out your arms a little bit, start to get your hands a little bit occupied. That's kind of how he works his way into fights. Listen, the danger, of course, against Edmen Shahbazyan is he's probably going to get killed early. Edmen is a really dangerous fighter. We've seen guys like Dricus du Plessis go the distance with Brad Tavares because Brad Tavares is tough, got a good chin, want to go out there and fight back and forth, tooth and nail. And this dude, Edmen Shahbazyan, said, hey, do me a favor, hold this, and then just kick them right in the face. And the fight was over, right? So we've seen Edmen can be one of the most dangerous first-round finishers in the UFC. But outside of that, he's got huge liabilities, right? When the fight gets extended, we saw AJ Dobson, he wins that fight in round 1. Nicely done. Round 2 against Dalcha Lungiambula. Dalcha Lungiambula might be the worst cardio fighter.
I think I got to correct you, brother. If I'm not mistaken, I think he won that fight versus AJ Dobson in the early round 2. Could be mistaken.
It says round 1 on Tapology.
Then you're right. You're right.
But on the Dalcha Lungiambula fight, right? Dalcha might be one of the only guys with a worse cardio base than Edmen. So not a good look, for Dalcha there, but fine win for Edmen, right? Nothing to sneeze at. He loses to Fluffy Hernandez. It just felt like the UFC was like throwing him out the window with that one, right? Like they give him the guy who's the ultimate pace warrior at 185 pounds. I know that Hernandez can be hurt with like needs to the body and things like that, but he's just a guy that you don't want to fight if you're a cardio weenie, right? If you don't have cardio, you do not want to fight Fluffy Hernandez. That's the last guy you want to sign to fight. Then he fights Nasruddin Imavov. Imavov has looked good lately, right? No doubt about that. But Imavov bullied him in the clinch, right? Just like sent him to the ground, kind of just dominated that fight pretty easily and got on top, beat him up from top position. And it just shows Edmen is not a comfortable fighter off of his back. Never has been. I don't know that he ever will be, right? He's been put in a lot of bad positions. Shaq Hermanson did everything but finish him, right? Mounted him, got some great positions. Honestly, it just looked like Jack was like, I need to win by any means necessary. Like, hold on to this guy if I need to, wasn't really great killer instinct, but he had done a lot of damage and just clearly won the fight by taking over in cardio, right? It was nothing based on like, who's the better fighter in round 1. It was all based on this guy cannot fight me for 15 minutes. So I will pace him out and beat him. And we've seen Jack Hermanson use like the path of least resistance before, right? Dance on the outside, throw calf kicks, gas the guy out against, Piper. Like the guy will just do whatever it takes. Chris Curtis, circle the outside and kick him in the leg and do not box with him, for $1 million. Like that was a winning game plan. So I think you see a lot of these fights and you say to yourself, okay, you can't justify the Derek Brunson fight. I mean, that was like the last great win of Derek Brunson's career. Goes out there, and Derek was a guy that you could finish in the first round. And he was able to survive that first round, wear him out, tire him out. I think that was a main event as well, if my memory serves. It was a long time ago, 2020. Yeah, main event, 3 5-minute rounds. I wonder why that was. 3 5-minute rounds for a main event. I wonder why that was. I wonder who negotiated for it to be 3 5-minute rounds. Probably the guy who got finished in the third, who doesn't have the cardio to fight 15 minutes. That's Edmen Shahbazyan. So Edmen has gotten new training partners, right? Supposedly done all the right things, went to Extreme Couture. You hear that he works hard. You hear that he's a tough kid, and he's still just 26 years of age. So sky's the limit, right? I guess. But I think that when you look at what he's shown so far in the octagon, the 6-4 record is, almost like generous to what he's really produced, right? Especially lately. It's been a tough run lately. And meanwhile, for GM3, he got the win over Brian Barberena. I don't really rate that very high. Barberena is not really in the UFC anymore. Frankly, he has no business in the middleweight division at all whatsoever. And that was borne out, right? He was way too small for that fight. He was getting dominated physically. Had nothing really to offer. The Andre Petroski fight was a super close fight, and it's a tough style matchup for Gerald in a lot of ways. I thought he had success on the feet in that one. The problem was he can't use his best attribute, his jiu-jitsu, against a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, a wrestler, guy with a lot of physicality. So I think that those were some tough spots. Joe Pyfer, just killed him instantly. Joe Piper's done that to a few guys. That's his win condition, right? I come out and I kill you instantly, or it's going to be a tougher fight for me. And for GM3, he probably knew, hey, if I can extend this guy, maybe I have some chances. But unfortunately, guys, he actually grappled him as well and also lost in grappling. So I just think that he was screwed any which way but lose in that fight. Bruno Silva, meanwhile, he was able to go out there and submit him in the third round. And honestly, guys, go back and watch that. That's a TKO. Gerald does what I like to call claims a win for jiu-jitsu, right? He is an absolute soldier about that. He'll kick you in the body. You bend over. Oh, I'm ready to quit. He'll grab a guillotine and just get you out of there. Claim another victim for jiu-jitsu. But this is a Duke Rufus trained striker that's going out there and putting kicks on people's body and fucking them up. And this guy, Bruno Silva, man, I don't know if he was sick. I don't know if he had a body double in that day. But the guy who went out there and said, I'm the best striker and I'm going to knock everybody out, he got knocked out, period, point blank, by Gerald Meerschaert. Go back and rewatch it. You don't believe me? Gerald Meerschaert knocked his ass out and submitted him. Bing, bang, boom, all in one exchange. So Gerald Meerschaert is that guy as far as I'm concerned. What a fucking legend. 36 years of age. Man, his best years are behind him, no doubt about it. He lost every minute against Dustin Stoltzfus, submitted him in round 3. I said, Gerald Meerschaert is minus 225 in this fight. It was so funny, man. I was on this channel. I was like, he's minus 225, guys, and you're going to have an inclination to bet Dustin Stoltzfus. And I was like, the thing is, Dustin's going to win every minute of this fight, but he's going to get submitted in the third round. And I maybe even not, down to the minutes, but like I just knew eventually he was going to find a way to fucking blow that fight because he was going to try and wrestle and grapple all night. And if you wrestle and grapple Gerald Meerschaert all night, he'll eventually catch your neck. He'll eventually make you pay. I think even Trevin Giles, if I'm not mistaken, let me just go back and look. Exactly that. Guillotine choke in round 3, exactly the same way it played out. Like, he's just a guy that will stay in the fight if you don't knock him out and keep fucking being a prick all night. So for me, this is live bet Gerald Meerschaert season, okay? If Gerald Meerschaert does not get killed in the first round of this fight, I believe he is going to win this fight. Like, could he lose in round 2? Yeah. But if the fight gets to round 2, I think that's when Gerald Meerschaert is like a 50-50 proposition in this fight. Because in the first round, you should absolutely favor Edmen Shahbazyan to go out there and clean this guy up because Gerald's not a prolific wrestler. He is a guy that's way slower, and he is going to be getting hit very, very hard. So for me, they're giving Edmen a fight where it's like an IQ test. Hey, man, you could go out there and win this. Khamzat Chimaev put one fist on this guy, and that was the end of the fight. You could do that. But if you go out there and fucking spend all that energy again, like you thought was cute in a lot of your previous fights, you haven't learned that lesson, and you don't get the finish, it's wraps for you. Because Gerald will not let you off the hook. If he's got 15 minutes to work and you're tired, I don't think you're making it to the final bell. I'll just leave it at that. Even if you're a good guy. And I think that Edmen is a guy that has a lot of natural talent, but I don't know if I rate him as for real. For me, he still has a lot to prove. His UFC wins, I don't think have held up to much. And, his UFC losses, they're the good fighters, but they're not in ways that told me like, yo, this guy is here to stay. They're in ways that are really concerning and like replicable, right? Like other guys could try and take that same path and beat you. So big problem for me. I think it's a winnable fight. Let's look at the odds here as I kick it to my brother from another. But I'm saying to myself, minus 280, Edmen Shahbazyan. Is it accurate? I probably put it at minus 230, like gut instinct, like 70%. That seems about fair. Because I think he probably wins it in round 1, like 50% of the time. But I have to think about it a little more. I think the speed disparity is huge in round 1. So I think Edmen's going to get off on big shots early. But that's why I'm saying, like, if the fight goes late, like you have to basically say, in order for him to be 70% in this fight, then he's got to win, in round 1 or 2 at like a 55% clip, I feel, at least.
Can I pose a different path to victory? And
of course,
if it's possible, I mean, he just has such a speed advantage. Why don't you, you've gassed out before, right? Why, as a coach in Dewey Cooper, I think he may say to him at some point in his career, and we've seen it before, hey, dude, let's just slow the fuck down. Like, let's not blow all of our energy in round one. Let's pick this guy apart. We have a massive speed advantage on the feet. There's no need to get into these no need to overextend, no need to get into these grappling exchanges. We're not going to be throwing hella body kicks. We don't want to get caught, put on the ground, have to grapple against this guy. Get into the later part of the round, then we can start to open up, because if he does try to finish this guy and he isn't able to, he knows he's going to gas out, and he's made that mistake time and time again. And I think his coaches actually have probably told him, you can't go out there and go for broken round one. He actually, as a guy, I think he could take all the way and not completely gas out, unless Gerald's completely successful in the wrestling, which we haven't seen him get, off as much lately. And honestly, I think the movement of Shahbazyan could stifle it. He's not going to be just falling over like Barberena. I don't like him when he's on the ground off his back, but go ahead, brother.
I was just going to add, man, Shahbazyan, by decision could be somewhat interesting. And the reason that I'm echoing your sentiments there is you look at the fact that, Gerald Meerschaert basically just got decision by a huge cardio liability in Andre Petrosky.
Big power
right?
puncher.
And obviously, Andre is like a guy who is a little bit more proven as a grappler, but like, who's to say Edmen couldn't just keep a jab in his face for 15 minutes? He obviously could do that.
Low kicks, just, play it at range, play it safe, get the dub. I think it's possible. When he's up against the cage, I think he gets away pretty good as well. He'll threaten with the front chokes. He had deep front chokes on Jack Hermanson, as well as Anthony Hernandez. So can't just leave your neck hanging there. GM3 has been outed to the sub before. I know we all think of him as a knockout guy, but he has also been submitted. Edmen, I don't think is the best grappler in the world. Especially once he gets put down to the mat. I don't know exactly who he's working with over at Extreme Couture. It seems like it's really him and Dewey for the most part. Like, that's one of his main pupils. So I think this is going to be a stand-up. Try and keep this one standing for Edmen Shahbazyan. Try and stay away from the grappling of GM3, and he should be able to get the job done here. I think I want to say square play. The obvious play would be the KO1, KO1-2 maybe even. But we've seen him slow the pace down. The Dobson fight was an interesting one because he definitely was getting hurt in round one. Man, I thought I was going to cash that Dobson ticket, but he doesn't even get to round two, like you said. That's what I had. I had Dobson round two, and that's kind of why I think it popped up back in my head. So I get the late cardio for GM3, but what if my man's, he it's not Dobson. I think Dobson's a way more dangerous striker. I think he poses a lot more threat on the feet. Why don't we just stay away from this guy? Why don't we not take the risks? And we've been seeing a lot of decisions lately as well, Liam. So I'm not counting it out. I don't know how I'll bet it, but I think Edmen, if he's smart, don't try and finish this guy in round one, because GM3 is just a motherfucker. He finds a way to win, and you find a way to lose. Don't fucking do it again.
He'd be the only guy to get praise for winning a decision, right? You always have to think about that. Who would they actually praise for winning a decision? This guy. Because he goes out there and fucking gasses all the time. If he could go out there and win a decision, they'll be like, hey, you know what? Maybe we have some near. And he's still just
done
26.
it before. GM3, I don't think has ever won a decision, if I'm not mistaken. And albeit it was a split versus Darren Stewart. Hey, you got the fucking job done, right? So when GM3's in split decisions, he's losing to Kevin Holland. He's losing these fights. He's not winning them. So I just think it's an interesting look.
Yeah, all his wins, all 11 wins for GM3 are finishes in the UFC. So put some respect on this man's name, everybody out there. Wants to shit on GM3. But in any case, right, he does have 9 losses in the promotion as well. So got to be cognizant of that fact. For me, I do think, probably a dogger pass situation. But I don't know if I could get there with my
betting Edmen
Shahbazyan
at minus 300 in 2024.
It has not been profitable thus far. I'll tell you that. It has not been profitable. But in any case, we've got Dennis Buzujka taking on Francis Fire Marshall. I don't have the strongest thoughts on this one, my brother. Do you want to lead us off on this fight?
I don't either, because I think Buzujka, with all due respect, he's just not good. He got knocked out by Jamal Emmers. He beat Connor Matthews by finish. Big whoop. So did Francis Marshall. I like Marshall as the younger guy. Not sure how much I rate Pellegrino as a gym in general, but I think his grappling will be up to par. I think he'll have wrestling success if he wants it. Buzujka could use the cage to work back up, but I'm not really feeling either of these guys. I don't know if I can get to a bet on either guy. If I get pick 'em or maybe even this line flips, I would look toward the Francis Marshall side. I think he works well. I don't want to, I think he was on a good trajectory. Obviously, had the split loss to Gomez, but Isaac Dolgarian's a fucking beast, bro. He would absolutely rape Dennis Buzujka, in my opinion. So I don't want to knock him for that loss, but he did get out of there pretty quickly. So I don't know how he's going to bounce back from that one. Not a strong read on this one for me either, my man. I'm going to have to definitely do some research, but I would definitely rate Law MMA as a better gym than Kurt Pellegrino's. But we also saw Charlampius Gregorio, shame on him. And honestly, dude, like you say, you get the Marabs, you get the Aljos, and then you get the Bazookas, and you get the Charlampos Gregorios. So it's definitely, not everybody at the gym is built everybody at the gym isn't built the same, right? So yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely look into this one more. For me, I don't bet on Dennis Buzujka unless he's a massive dog. Not gonna do it, and even then, you can't trust the guy because he gets completely outed by Sean Woodson. So it would be Marshall or pass for me here, but I'm gonna have to definitely look into the fire Marshall.
Yeah, I haven't picked these, fights great for Dennis Buzujka, but I'll just refer back to this. Let me pull this up because I always love the fact that I've been doing this shit so long that I have a lot of stuff that's just like in the background, right? So stuff that I haven't even referred back to in a long time, but it could be worthwhile. So I'm going to share it on the screen right now. And keep in mind, this was before he fought on Contender Series the second time. Not sure how far Dennis projects to go in MMA. Doesn't seem like an extremely dynamic athlete or finisher. That being said, he's clearly tough in game. I have seen him take big punches, consistent jabs, and keep coming forward and pursuing the fight. So basically, he's a pretty average guy, right? And this was even back then, he just struck me as a very average fighter. I didn't really know what his, ceiling is in the UFC. Even many fights that go to decision, he stumbles opponents. Perhaps his finishing instincts need work, right? He was able to go out there and finish Connor Matthews last time out, but Francis Marshall, when he got finished, it was a guy, in Isaac Dolgarian who's an absolute savage. And I told people, I was like, if this fight goes 2 rounds, I don't know what's going to happen. I was like, but if this fight is a 1-round fight, Isaac Dolgarian's going to stomp a mud hole in this guy. Reason being, Isaac Dolgarian's like one of the most dangerous first-round fighters I've ever seen. And if you guys don't believe me, go watch the Christian Rodriguez fight, where I thought he made tactical errors by like not dropping hammers and elbows through his face, but instead he was going for a lot of submissions. He just got on top, dominated, passed guard. Like he was in aggressive attack mode from second one and put him in a lot of bad situations, a lot of bad positions very quickly in that fight. So that's what Isaac does, man. He gets to good positions. He asserts himself early. He dominates. That was going to always be a really, really bad fight for Francis Marshall. If it ended early, and that's exactly what happened, right? He had no chance. The William Gomis fight, he chased Gomis around all night. Gomis was just content to circle the outside, use his length, use his frame, kind of a negative fighter, right? People describe that style as being a weasel, but he's 5-1. He hasn't lost a UFC fight yet. He had to pull out of his last fight due to weight cut complications. He was supposed to fight Gene Silva. I think he would have got killed in that one. And now he's supposed to fight Joe Anderson Brito. Interesting. But in any case, right, William Gomis, I thought, was a tough opponent again because he's coming into that fight and he's got to take on a guy who's, very long, very awkward and didn't really want to engage with him. So I think Francis Marshall now has a willing dance partner in Dennis Buzujka, a guy who's going to go out there and throw at them a little bit. I don't know. I think if I had to credit both guys, like what they're good at and what they're not good at, right? I think Dennis is probably a little bit more durable than Francis. He did get knocked out by Jamal Emmers, but frankly, I think Jamal Emmers maybe can knock out Francis Marshall as well. He's just a little bit sharper and faster than these guys on the feet, way more experienced, and he makes a ton of mistakes, right? If you just look at Jamal Emmer's career, he's made a ton of like huge pivotal mistakes, got knocked out by Nate Landwehr, thrown away a couple close
Playing
decisions against
footsies with Pat
Jenkins and
Sabatini.
Chikadze. Oh, dude, but that you remember what happened, right? He knocks him down. Bing, huge uppercut. Pat Sabatini is virtually like asleep on the ground. Then he goes toe hold for heel hook with a black belt and gets his knee ripped into shreds. I was like, what? It was one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in an MMA fight. That's the kind of stuff, again, when you're in like a low consequence, like role in the room, you'd still not trade a toe hold for a heel hook, right? Like a toe hold is a good way to get somebody to let go before they have something. But once they have the heel hook locked in, you're not going to out toe hold their heel hook. It's just negative EV grappling, right? And we saw him pay the price for that. I think that when you're looking at this fight, I don't have a good feel for Dennis Buzujka, right? Against Sean Woodson, he's getting out grappled by a kickboxer, right? Like it was a really awkward look. He gets knocked out by Jamal Emmers. Not a great look. He went to decision with Meerschaert, and that's fair enough, right? But you look at the fight and he kind of just shelled into himself in rounds 2 and 3. He didn't really look like he wanted to be there as much. He was kind of getting beat up in that fight. So he kept coming forward. He kept throwing a little bit, but just really wasn't a guy that had the tools, the physicality, the danger factor, right? And then you look at the fact that he went out there against Calio Romero. They gave him another chance on Contender, and they basically told him as much as what I had written up in my article, which is like, hey, you look all right, man, but you don't look like you're meant to be here, so like go out there and start finishing people or do something exciting or, show that you're really a level above these guys. And I don't know that he's a level above the regional level talent. I think he's right there with them. I think there's a lot of guys that you could probably find that are fighting on regional shows around the world that could beat Dennis Buzujka. But I think the same is probably true of Francis Marshall. He got here young. He got here inexperienced, 9 professional fights. So maybe he just needs to take a 1-3 contract back to the regional scene and get his ass, into shape for fighting and, like grow into his body and those kind of things. He's still a young man in the game. But ultimately, I don't feel like I have a huge edge on this fight. I don't feel like one guy is like head and shoulders above the other. They both project right now as very average featherweights to me, with all due respect to them. I don't see either one of these guys a top 15 guy. I don't see either one of them as head and shoulders above each other. Looking at the measurables on paper, they're about the same height and reach. Slight advantage in the reach department to Francis Marshall, 72 inches compared to 70 in a hook. They're both 25, 26 years of age. So two Northeast guys, two tough guys. I don't really have too many positive things to say. I just think Francis Marshall, I believe he was a purple belt when he got to the UFC. The one thing I wanted to mention, this is important, very important. He's training at American Top Team. So you had mentioned Pellegrino MMA. That is definitely where he did train. Now he has been training with Grant Dawson. He's been training with these kind of guys. Looks like he made a more permanent move there. And he posted the first thing with Grant Dawson 40 weeks ago. It says, great week of training at ATT. Thank you for all the help. Went in a training room with top level guys. It's hard not to get better. Then since then, he's posting with Gamrot. He's posting getting in a bunch of different rounds with these guys. So it looks like he's gotten some diverse training. Looks like he's mixed it up a little bit. That's important, right? Getting in with Movsar Evloev, getting in with all these guys, it's going to be big for his confidence. And I think that he had, more natural talent to me visually before he got to the UFC than Dennis Buzujka. The problem is, where's his confidence at having gotten starched, having gotten 2 losses in a row? You have to wonder, but he beat Marcelo Rojo. He got a UFC level win under his belt. Both these guys have won. Let's find out who's for real and who needs to go back to the regional scene and get a little more seasoning. I think that it's an honest fight and either guy could get it.
Honestly, that's exactly how I feel, bro. Honestly.
Love to see it. We're on the same page there, my brother. Next up, I can't wait to clip this one and see if it goes viral in Bolivia. Shout out to all my Bolivian listeners. Shout out to everybody who's been rocking with me since the Jose Medina, fight on Contender Series last year. But the most popular video I ever put out on this channel, guys, was a clip from my Contender Series breakdown when this guy was fighting Magomed Gadziasulov. And if you go back and watch, I gave Jose Medina a little grief, not because of himself. I just said, listen, the guy's doing what he's supposed to do in terms of going out there and fighting and getting wins. And he's a tough guy. You can see that about him, and he's game and he wants to be there. But I was like, ultimately, he looks like he's fighting taxi drivers. He looks like he's fighting guys, that aren't serious professional fighters. It looks like they go back to, just doing whatever they do on the side. Just like as like a day job. And then, I'll take a fight on Saturday. Sure. Yeah. It didn't seem like these guys were really quality opposition, right? So you always have to wonder when a guy like that comes in, how for real is he? You know, is he a serious fighter? And his losses were to Antonio Gordillo, who is 12-3-1, and Claudio Rocha, who is 9-8. That was back in 2018, 2019, respectively. But again, his best wins were over Fernando Filo, 4-2, Diego Paixão, 2-0, Hernan Gonzalez, 2-1. He's barely beating fighters with winning records. So we, just said Medina, we weren't sure if he was a guy that really had UFC quality, right? My guests were not as judicious with their language, right? They basically let him have it. They were like, this guy's no fucking good. This guy's a fucking bum. He's going to get killed. And I say this with love and affection for my guests, right? But they were letting him have it. And so I clipped it out. I put it out. And Magomed Gadzhiesulov, guys, if you go back and watch that fight, he won it. He won probably every round. But it was so awkward. It was so ugly. It was so gross. Medina clearly still wanted to keep fighting. He kept pushing, kept throwing at him, kept getting in his face, blood going. He didn't care. He honestly just didn't care about getting hit. He no-sold it a lot of times. He was getting hit, walking him down. And if it told me one thing, it told me that this guy, Magomed Gadzhiesulov, is a complete fraud, right? And I said as much when he was going to fight Brendan Ribeiro, and Brendan Ribeiro did everything he could to lose that fight. You guys can go back and watch it. I still, to this day, don't know how my read wasn't perfect. What did I say? I think I said he was going to guillotine him in round one. He had the guillotine fucking locked in round one, and he found a way to blow it. Just unbelievable. Called that fight to a T and didn't make any money. But in any case, when you look back, like Magomed Gadzhiesulov, it's still bad. I'll fade him again. He stinks. But he's from Bahrain, and he's got the Russian flag, Bahrainian flag, nice name to him, Magomed. It all sounds legit. So he will continue to be a minus 700 favorite until he inevitably loses to some jabroni, right? Now, on the interesting format for this fight, Zach Reese, guys, before his last fight, people were saying this guy is the worst guy to ever sign with the UFC. I remember people saying this. They were saying this guy is like a complete bum. He's a shithouse. He sucks. And he lost to Cody Brundage. In that fight, I had said, I don't know what Zach Reese is. I don't know who Zach Reese is. I was like, he's just going to go out there and, be violent. That's what we know about him, right? Every fight basically is ending in the first round, right? He's just going out there and having these violent fights. And the thing that made me think Zach Reese maybe was a little fugazi, right? Was a little bit susceptible, was that Contender Series fight where he ends up on the ground and then he just armbars the guy quickly. Great. Nice win. But as we talk about a lot of times, how sustainable is it? How replicable is it? You're going to go out there and armbar everybody in the UFC? You're going to get taken down to your back and armbar people? Not a very plus EV strategy more often than not, right? And then you look at Zach Reese, goes out there, goes for a bottom submission, right, in the UFC. And one thing I talk about is if you're going to get a scoop grip, no problem, right? You want to take a scoop grip and go for these submissions, no problem. If you don't get the scoop grip, you're going to get slammed on your head one day. Trikar Close, Joe Selecki. Take your pick. How many times do we have to see it in the UFC? Guy goes for a submission. They commit both hands to the submission. Okay. Slam their head right on the ground. There's nothing they could do to obstruct it if both their hands are occupied, right? What do you do if you're normally going to fall? You brace either with your shoulders or with your hands. If I'm falling backwards, I brace with my shoulders. If I'm falling forwards, I brace with my hands. If I have both my hands engaged on a submission, I can't brace in either direction. I'm going to get slammed right in my head. It's a really bad idea, right? So when you don't see the scoop grip, it's a rookie mistake. Made a rookie mistake, got slammed on his head, paid for it, really bad. Then he goes out there and fights the ghost of Julian Marquez. And I say the ghost of Julian Marquez because Julian Marquez used to be a really tough, durable fighter, and he hasn't been since he came back, right? He had health scares, injuries. He fumbled the bag with Miley Cyrus. Fucking 10 different ways to Sunday. This guy fucked it all up. And I feel sorry for him, right? I hope he's all right in life. Like health, wealth, happiness. Wish nothing more for the guy than that. But realistically, he's a podcaster and a fucking porn guy or whatever the fuck he does now outside of fighting. He's not all head in the game, right? He's kind of doing 10 other projects. And I think that when we saw that fight, we kind of saw like a guy who was checked out, a guy who didn't want to be there, and a guy who looked like he was a little soft around the body, if I'm being frank. For a guy that used to look like an athlete, just looked a little bit more like a guy who was like play acting a fighter. And that was found out quickly, right? Zach Reese, meanwhile, was really fucking coming with a point to prove, right? He was embarrassed after his first fight. Shit didn't work out for him. He had come in with a lot of piss and vinegar, thinking I'm the man. Then he gets finished quickly. That could be an ego shatter, right? So he comes back. He gets a big win under his belt. By the way, he did it in front of a crowd. He lit the crowd on fire. He did everything right? That second win that he had was huge. It was impactful. He went out there, made a huge statement. But all the questions that there were before he got to the Contender Series are still there. What does this guy look like in a deep fight? What does he look like in the second round? Because that's still an unknown question. What does he do if he gets put on bottom again? Does he make the same bad decisions? Does he put himself in bad situations? It's one thing to be super aggressive, throwing up triangles and all this shit against bad guys. What happens if somebody passes your guard? Then starts to make you pay for it, right? And now you start to get a little tired. How does he react to those things? We don't have our answers there. So that for me is what creates some interesting interplay. However, who do I expect is the better grappler in this fight? I think it's obviously going to be Zach Reese. He's a guy that goes out there and gets submissions in his fights. Meanwhile, Jose Medina, 2-1 career to the submission, never submitted anybody that mattered. No disrespect. Got submitted by 9-8 Claudio Rocha in 2018. Not a very bullish signal, right? I think Pick'em makes a great point here. Medina does seem to have a chin. Absolutely true. Reese should win by sub if they grapple. I tend to agree. That's probably the path of least resistance. If I'm in Zach Reese's corner, if I'm his coach, that's what I'm telling him to go for, right? That's what I'm telling him to do. Hey, take this guy to the ground. Magomed Gadzhiesulov didn't have a great submission game. He was just taking him down, leaning on him a little bit, and looking to get him out of there with strikes against a guy who's tough, pretty durable, held up. I think that the way you try and take this guy out is with the submission. You look at a guy like Zach Reese, and he's 6'4". He's going to be the taller guy. He's the longer guy in this matchup. 77-inch reach compared to 74.5 for Jose Medina. So he's a big guy, but are either one of these guys spring chickens? No. I mean, it's a 30-year-old against a 33-year-old. People are talking about Zach Reese like he's this fresh up-and-coming prospect. I mean, I guess for the middleweight division, he's just an inexperienced fighter. He's 30 years of age. Like, you guys go listen to Dana whenever he talks about anything related to fighting and age. Listen to it. He says, we're not looking to sign 30-year-olds. Like, you got to already be ready at 30. You got to have some fucking skills to offer at 30. So Zach Reese, he's a prolific finisher. He had a fight fucking 10 years ago, I think, against Kevin Holland. So guy's been around for a long time, but he still doesn't have any extended fights. So that is just like a gaping question in this large sample size. The one time he did go the distance, he lost, and he hasn't been the distance since. And most of his fights end in round one this way or the other way. What do we know about Medina from his last fight? Maybe not an easy guy to put away in the first round, right? Maybe a guy who's going to stand there and you might hit him a lot of times. He might be the world's most fucking, upright punching bag in the first round, but he's taking the shots, right? He's a tough guy and he's not afraid to get hit. Why did Dana White sign a guy that lost a UFC fight, guys? Not common. Maybe it's because he thinks this is the ultimate jobber. Like, this guy will take the best big punches. He'll just stand in the middle. He's not afraid of nothing. I'll pay him 10 grand. Maybe that's why. Like, honest assessment. That could be why. Or maybe he's like, you know what? We can't find many great Bolivian fighters. This guy, I can match him up accordingly. I can try and find him the right fights, some fights where maybe he could go out there, test some people's cardio, see what we really have with these guys. And maybe we could get him a couple wins under his belt. Maybe we can make a story out of this guy. He's 33 years of age. He's not going to be a UFC champion. He's not going to fight for a title or some shit like this. But could he be the best fighter ever from Bolivia? Why not? And Zach Reese, is he going to be, some like legend in the UFC or something? Hey, he's got a long time to write his story. But for me, he just seems like another guy that is like contender series fodder, guy who comes in with I can win in the first round type of style. The problem is more often than not, we don't see that payoff for guys down the stretch. We don't see them say, and I also had this 15 minutes of wrestling that I could display. Plus I can go out there and kickbox. It's like most of the time it's like, I'm a dangerous dude. I come out crazy and aggressive and fucking hungry. And I got 6.5 minutes of real piss and vinegar. And then naturally, I can't sustain that for 15. So if this guy Medina, the brickhead, is just out there taking a bunch of shots against the fence, staying upright and ready to keep firing back, who knows if he becomes live later on in this fight? Because I'll tell you, the body transformation is wicked on this guy, right? He was fighting last time out at light heavyweight and looked like he had, not missed many meals, let's say, right? My man was eating. He was doing just fine. Now he looks like an athlete. Like, they've changed his body composition entirely. If you guys haven't seen the pictures, go look at him. The guy looks like a completely different person. So it's 3:13 local time. I know my guy's probably got to, tuck it in soon, but
I'll be up all night, dog. You're good.
You're a savage. You're a savage.
I
appreciate you, dog.
Let's go.
But in any case, man,
hit that like button too.
What do you think of this fight? Because we've got a Texas guy, right? Texas stand up. Your guy Zach Reese is in the building. But on the other side, man, we got Jose Medina. And like I said, huge transformation physically, a whole country behind him, got signed basically on the strength of being a tough motherfucker. And Dana personally gave him the sign of approval. So I think it's going to be an interesting fight. And I'm looking at the odds because I always like to peer over at the odds, see if there's anything notable, noteworthy to talk about. And Jose Medina is a plus 400 underdog. Zach Reese minus 550. And I think it's a little presumptuous for a guy who just hasn't been deep in fights, but let's see what the market settles out at. How do you feel?
Crazy. I guess you got, a guy in Medina who just doesn't have that much skill, and that's why Zach Reese maybe is that big of a favorite here. Maybe it's the that recent win over what's his name, Julian Marquez. But Julian Marquez, that looked like he just hit him on the chin. That was it. I get why you wouldn't trust Reese, but I do think he has the advantages in the speed early in this matchup. I think he has the better striking, clearly. I think he's more dangerous with his jiu-jitsu. I don't really see any offensive wrestling out of him, though, honestly, in his fights. Like, if you could go back and tell me which fights he's offensively wrestling in, like, I'll watch it, but I don't really see him shooting takedowns here. So what if he's not able to finish Medina? We don't know what this guy looks like out of round one. He's got only like 6 or 7 fights in general, so at a minus 600 favorite, we're talking about thin margins here. This guy can make any simple type of mistake. Go back and look at Jacob Malkoun versus Cody Brundage. He gets this guy to the ground. He has every dominant position. He's a minus 600 favorite. He's about to get the job done. And he fucking makes a mistake, simple mistake of hitting this guy in the back of the head. Reese just hasn't been in these spots. He made the simple mistake as a favorite to not scoop grip the leg, right? And he gets power bombed. When do we see guys get power bombed? It's meme type shit like that loses you fights as a big favorite like this.
I'm pretty sure him and Selecki were on the same night. If my memory serves, I'm pretty sure it was like back to back, bro.
Live, brother. I was there live. Just cashed on Cody Brundage round 1 knockout right after the slam. It was the only bet I had all night. I was flipping shit in the crowd, bro. Back-to-back slam KOs. I couldn't fucking believe it.
That's insane, unreal, bro. Dude. What a great memory.
Insane, bro. And the cash was just as sweet, bro. Plus 800 on the Brundage round 1 knockout. I don't think that's how it happens here. I do think Zach Reese probably gets the win early. I think he probably wraps up a sub. I think he's super dangerous, but is he really going to offensively wrestle here? And honestly, I don't think he's got the craziest hands in the world. Sky Medina might just have the granite chin. He might be able to take the damage early. And what if this guy just tries to finish? What if he just makes a rookie mistake? I just think this guy's way too green, way too raw to be this big of a favorite. I do think he trains at a good gym. I like the War Training Center. They've produced UFC guys like Trevin Giles before. Obviously, Charlie Ontiveros as well. Didn't go as well for that guy. So, like, we have the Dennis Bazukias and the Aljamain Sterlings. Not every person from the gym's built the same. This guy's relatively unknown. Most of his fights in Fury, quick finishes versus guys who aren't the best, and right to the UFC. So I can't trust this guy at all at this price tag. I do think he has slick transitions off his back. Obviously, we saw that in the Aronov fight. It was a tough one for me to choose, the hometown guy versus the Jew, right? Who do I go with? And luckily, I think I just wound up passing. But Aronov was about to get his game going there. I thought he should have been the side, and obviously winds up in a bad position there. So I don't really know what to make of Zach Reese. I think everybody's thinking of him as the lock of the week. Medina's a trash can, right? He got signed off a loss. Yeah, I could already hear it in my head. So this is going to be a huge dogger pass for me. I don't know if I can trust, though, the skills of Medina. He lost to a guy who we think is terrible in the Magomed guys. So I don't know, man. Don't trust Zach Reese as far as I could throw him. Don't think I could throw him that far.
Here's the thing, though, right? Would Zach Reese be favored to beat Magomed Gadzhiesulov? I think the answer to that is fuck no. I could be wrong about that, but that's my honest impression. It's like Magomed Gadzhiesulov, I think on name alone, it'd be minus 200. Like, I think if you throw Zach Reese, like, what is it? 1-1 UFC with Magomed Gadzhiesulov, 9-0, undefeated Russian, Bahrainian flag. Like, I could easily see that minus 200 and getting bet on the Gadzhiesulov side. Because the other thing about Zach Reese is he hasn't gone the distance. So, like, who's to say Magomed couldn't just blanket him, right? No armbar from guard, just I'm fucking laying on you, right? And to your point, Eli Aronoff got a takedown, fucking instantly? Like, just push the guy over. And then, of course, the armbar from guard is what we'll remember because he got the win there. But even in that fight, if I remember correctly, dude, Aronoff, like, stood straight up and, like, the arm got fully extended and he went to, like lift and just, like, couldn't, right? Like, he went to, like, lift it, but it was already, like, extending, so he had to tap. But, dude, like, it was, like, he laid out the groundwork for how he could get beat, and then he got beat the next time that exact way. And so he showed a much better product last time. But the one thing about Marquez that he needs to make his game work is durability. Because if you go back and watch the Phil Hawes fight, he beats Phil Hawes, great win. He got his ass whooped by Phil Hawes until Phil Hawes started to get tired. And then he said, haha, I'm still here. You forgot. I can still do this. And that was always his thing. Come back on people. You can't take one punch. You can't come back on somebody, right? Brendishin was close to subbing Godsey, bro. And I'm telling you, I had called that to a T. I had said, like, you know, I think he's going to submit him via guillotine in the first round. So it was really annoying to me. He blew it. The guy's a fucking idiot. No disrespect, but just like, I truly feel that way. He had the fight won and he fucking blew it. So in any case, I would bet Reese over Magomed. That line would be plus 250 on Reese for sure. I'm agreeing with you, dude. I would bet the exact same thing on upside that he'd knock him out. But yeah, the market 100% would be on Gadzhi Sulov because he's got the name and the face, right? He looks Russian as shit. He sounds Russian as shit, but I don't think he fights Russian as shit. I think he fights a little bit average. But in any case, my man, we can move on to the next fight. I think we both agree, you know, just dogger pass situation, too many unknowns on the favorite. And he's not a young man, you know, he's not a, you know, particularly, you know, high level talent or something that people were high on coming in. He's a guy that's gotten a couple of arm bars off and, you know, a couple cool things, but mostly a first round finisher. Next up, my man, the rubber's going to meet the road for somebody. We got Viacheslav Borshev taking on James Llontop. Llontop is 25 years of age. He's the much younger party in this fight. And he looks like he's going to be a substantial underdog here. Looking at the line, Slava Claus is about a minus 200 favorite, taking on Llontop, who's about a plus 180 underdog. Can Llontop grapple? Because if he can, this is really, really stupid. If he can't, it's probably right. What do you think? I don't even remember James Llontop, bro. I'm going to have to look at his fights. He feels like a vague memory of mine.
I agree to the grappling point, and the one thing I'd also want to bring up is Slava has been hurt, especially as of recently. We saw him dropped on the regional scene by Kenley St. Louis, of all people. If Kenley St. Louis could drop you, my man, James Llontop could drop you. Like, that's all I'm going to say.
Dude, I have to stop you and tell you a story. When Chris Padilla was debuting in the fucking UFC, I wrote in my article, either Chris Padilla by stoppage in round 1 or James Llontop stoppage round 2 or 3. And I didn't bet it. And he was like plus 400 and he stopped him in round 1. I was really, really annoyed with myself there. And guys, there was just a huge grappling disparity. You know, like I basically thought to myself, I was like, if he gets extended, it's a short notice fight. He's not going to have the level of preparation. It's probably going to go poorly for him. But early, he had the skills, I thought, to grapple this guy and fucking did it. And I didn't have any money on it. So I was disgusted there. But in any case, I think Padilla maybe could do the same thing to Slava. So please continue, bro.
He definitely would, bro. 100%.
He would with a shocking quickness. You're right.
You know, maybe not sub, maybe even ground and pound him because Slava is kind of one of those people, almost like Edmen. He'll kind of capitulate to the ground and pound, right? He'll not give up the sub to give up mount, to give up some elbow.
Well, honestly, dude, Slava's one of the toughest motherfuckers I've ever seen. He just literally does not know what the fuck to do.
Right.
On the bottom positions. Like, dude, he was in a fully locked in rear naked choke against Kenley St. Louis, if my memory serves, and just like ripped it off and got out. Like, he's a tough bastard, but he's bad, right? So he'll do bad things and like get into horrible, horrible positions. Chase Hooper beating him was one of my favorite fucking bets of all time, dude. Please continue though.
Yeah, I wish I could have cashed the knockout there also though, but certain ref didn't like it, and maybe it just got mushed to the gills when the ref's not trying to stop it like that. You already know that's what happened, right? Like, dude, honestly,
think of the fights that we see stopped on the feet, like nobody went down, and then it's like somebody could beat you into a fucking bloody pulp on the mat, dude, and they will just let it go. Jacqueline Amarim just beat the brains out of the ears of fucking, what's that poor woman's name? And I was literally about to cry on my kitchen floor. I was like, they're gonna rob me. I was like, they're not gonna stop the fight.
Oh man, dude. Yeah, it happens that way. Honestly, though, I think if he doesn't get bonked, if he doesn't get grappled, I think he wins this fight, man. I think he's the better kickboxer. I think he's a lot quicker. I think, Nazim Sadikov, we'll give him all the shit in the world, but I think he's a good kickboxer. I think he's got good stand-up. Him taking him down maybe isn't the best look for Slava Klaus, but he's got good stand-up. And then Chase Hooper obviously hit him with that overhand, but, I had to mix it up with the wrestling as well. Slava didn't see it coming. put him down, man. Hooper beatdown was only 3 months ago. It's a great point as well, man. How do we know if Slava's going to be able to come back from that? That was an absolute shellacking that he took from Chase Hooper. And give all the people the shit you want. Chase Hooper, I think, is getting more physical at this weight class, better, all that good stuff. I don't think Llontop has the same path to take him down, but could he hurt him on the feet? I mean, we've seen it time and time again now with Viacheslav Borshev, which would be why I don't think I could trust him here as a favorite. Doesn't get bonked, doesn't get grappled here, though. Probably he's going to win the fight via kickboxing. Llontop, I haven't seen much of him grappling, but he did have success. Although it wasn't via takedowns, I thought his top control and what he did on top looked good against his Contender Series opponent. I believe his name was Lewis or Malik something.
Lewis.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't think he's a complete fish on the mat. I think the guy knows what he's doing, and maybe out of all the times, finally just shoot a takedown, bro. I don't think Slava necessarily needs to have a D1 wrestler against him to put this guy on the mat. So maybe we'll see this guy attempt some takedowns here. I'm not sure that I could trust him to do so with the film that I've seen previously. So I think Slava wins the fight, but there's got to be a caution for me landed chalk here. Like I stated, the durability, the recent slacking, and just the overall bad ground game.
Yeah, it's very hard for me to get to the idea of Slava as a minus 200 favorite in a UFC fight. I think he's got very, very negative grappling, period. Like a tough enough guy, but a guy that could just be taken down, held down, put in bad spots, submitted. All negative traits, right? And Chris Padilla, like we mentioned, probably would submit either one of these guys in a rerun based on what we know about them. Then you look at the fight with Chase Hooper. I think Chase Hooper would submit Llontop easily, so I'll give him a pass on that. I think he would probably dominate him on the ground as well. I think that the Nazim Sadikov fight, I don't rate Nazim very high. No disrespect to him. We'll see how his career plays out. I think he's got some good athletic intangibles. I think he's a tough guy, but I don't think his skills blow me away. I would put him more with the Charalamposes and the Dennis Buzujkas.
He's like in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. He bridges the gap, right? Let's say he's in between Frivola and those guys, right? Like I think Frivola is better than him, but like he's the next little rung below there, right? So, he's a decent guy in the gym, right? He's a solid fighter, but I didn't come away from that fight thinking like, man, this is like a next level guy. Like it was just like, man, these two crazy strikers went out there and put on a war, but to the point of city travel, Slava has a glass chin now. That first Hooper punch had no power. I'm going to disagree with you there, but I'm going to say his chin was never good, right? He's kind of just an older guy, and when you look at his age, right? Slava is 32 years of age, but when we're talking about divisions matter, right? And at lightweight, it's a little different, right? And when your second career is not in wrestling, but in kickboxing, the dude's just been hit many times. Right? He's been getting hit a lot in his fights and all the time from when he was a regional fighter to now. When he gets hit, he gets hurt really bad. He just does a lot of damage. So when he hits people, he fucking hurts them too, right? Even if they're really durable, he hits people and they get fucked up because he hits very hard. But he's a guy that takes a lot of risks. His grappling is negative and he can get hurt badly on the feet. So like if everything's going perfect for the guy, he could still be one punch away from getting hurt himself. And then let's go look at the wins, guys, because here's where the real rubber meets the road. It's one thing to lose to tough guys. He lost to Mike Davis. He gave him some hell in that fight. No shame in that. He lost to Mark Diakese. He absolutely got embarrassed fundamentally. I was there in the building. He had nothing to offer. Nothing to offer Mark Diakese for 15 minutes, guys. He got, honestly, he just got taken down and dominated in a way that was auditing on your career. It basically said, like, dude, you have no skills in the wrestling and grappling because without trying to hurt you or finish you, I could just dominate you here. And by the way, Mark Diakese no longer with the UFC. So, a couple of real bearish signs. The wins, guys. Chris Duncan via knockout in a meme-like fashion, right? Great shots. Hit him to the body. Hit him upstairs. Did a good job there. But Chris Duncan came out stiff. He came out awkward. He was a guy that had a lot of pressure. He was undefeated coming into that fight. Contender Series. He went out there trying to trade with Slava. Huge mistake, right? He should have just tried to take him down like his life depended on it. If he had it to rerun, he would do that. Then you look at the Dakota Bush fight. Guys, Dakota Bush is not UFC level. I'm sorry. He just isn't. He never was. He's never going to be, I don't think. No disrespect to the man, but that's what I saw, right? When he was in the UFC, I didn't see a UFC level guy. So you're seeing a guy that lost to William Starks, Went life and death with Kenley St. Louis. He had some sketchy moments in some of these fights against Diakese. He just had nothing to offer. The Maheshate fight was fine. Right? He went out there and got a nice win over Maheshate. But I don't know where to rate him out. I'm not very high on him at all, though. It's a complete dogger pass for me. I have to study Llontop and see if he's worth playing. Maybe it's better to just pass on this fight, but Slava minus 200, those are things that don't go together in my vocabulary.
Yeah. Interesting point to make. Slava 1-3-1 to the decision. Llontop actually has done pretty well. I think he's only lost one decision and has won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-1 to the decision. So if this fight hits the scorecards, maybe I would trust Llontop more, but maybe that would have to be due to the grappling. And the one thing I want to mention, you mentioned the Mark Diakese fight. Mark Diakese, not really a submission guy. He's more a hold you down, get you there, finish. Not really going to finish you. He had some arm triangle opportunities versus Slavakos. Like you mentioned, this guy's just negative on the ground. Llontop never, I don't think, ever got a submission. He got outed by the submission in the last fight. But obviously, you go out and get submitted. What do? At a young age, you go back to the gym. You try to improve. Llontop's still relatively young, so I think he could be making those improvements. And when you're talking about a crazy huge number, plus 2,000 on the sub, I don't think it's impossible. We just saw the guy get outed by sub. I do think he's super tough, but like you said, the Kenley St. Louis fight, he had positions there. And if you rock the guy at this age with this durability, I don't count the submission completely out for Llontop, even though he hasn't gotten one yet. We don't really know what he looks like on the mat. He was floating positions well, going to the back on Malik Lewis. Never really looking to finish, though. But what if Slava just gives it up, man? Like, what if he just makes that massive mistake on the ground? If you're almost getting submitted via arm triangle by Mark Diakese, Mark Diakese ain't that good either.
I think the case against it is that he didn't get submitted by Mike Davis, but I definitely see what you're saying. I think what would need to happen is you need to hurt him, right? Because we've seen he's tough as fuck. Like I mentioned, Kenley St. Louis, essentially had a fully finished rear naked choke, right? Like hand like here, and he just was like, "Oh, give me that," and just like ripped it back. Slava will try and fight out of shit, but what have I said a million times on this show? You can't tough guy a choke. You just go to sleep like everybody else, right? So if he puts him in a tight choke, I think Slava will go to sleep. I think he's a guy that you can out grapple, but I don't know anything about Llontop's grappling. I don't know that it's going to be his look here. I think he's going to look to just put damage on him, right? And see if he could hurt him. See if he could, if he does take him to the ground, like he did to Malik Lewis, try and cook him, right? Try and beat him up, land some shots. Pick'em says he's a gas bag. Yeah, what do you do if you're fighting a gas bag? Take him down, knock him down, try and beat him up on the ground and tire him out. So I think that all makes a lot of sense. I was betting Medeiros over Nazim. Unfortunately, that got canceled. So we'll have to see if that gets rebooked, my man. But in any case, like I said, just dogger pass for me on the fundamentals, and I'll do more research. Next up, guys, we got Josianne Nunes taking on Jacqueline Cavalcanti. I don't know if it's Cavalcanti or Cavalcanti. I'm just being an idiot. But when you look at the Zara Farron fight, that should not have been that close. Just should not have been that close, guys. It was a somewhat competitive fight. And Zara Farron, the crowd was reacting like it was fucking, a prime, French world champion or something, right? Because they got Zara Farron. They were just hyped to be there. I wasn't really blown away by Cavalcanti in that display. Pedestrian win over a very old opponent that hadn't had much UFC level success. So hats off to her. For Josianne Nunes, I think that she's got terrible, laughably bad grappling. I don't mean that to be disrespectful. Again, these are UFC level fighters. If she punched me in the face, I'd have a concussion. This girl hits hard. She's solid. But the grappling is what the grappling is, right? And I can, I have the right to an opinion. Just in terms of, I've watched a lot of people grapple in this sport. It's not good. Chelsea Chandler, frankly, should have had a much easier time dominating her. And chose a path of more resistance on the feet. And when she took the fight to the ground, looked like a complete mismatch, right? I think that when you look at Josianne Nunes, she's been taken down by Ramona Pascal. She's been taken down and put in some bad situations. So I feel like her grappling, she's a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is no good. No good at all. If this Cavalcanti girl can go out there and do anything productive on the mat, she could be the side in this fight. Problem is, I'm looking, she's 0-3 career to the submit, or excuse me, 0-0 career to the submission, 3-1 to the decision, 3-0 to the knockout. So it doesn't seem like submissions are the primary part of her game. Let me peek at her Instagram and see if there's anything, where she
some ground and
posted.
pound videos. That's what you'll see.
Interesting. I'm looking more so for a picture of her in a gi, if any such thing exists, because fighters normally have 1 or 2 pictures in the gi, but it's buried in their Instagram, and it's when they got promoted that day at the gym or something like that. I'm not seeing anything obvious for her as a jiu-jitsu belt or pedigree or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick it over to you, brother. If I see anything as I scroll, I will let you know. But I'm curious your thoughts on this fight, my man. Do you see
I
any
think
value
she,
here?
yeah, I think she's definitely better on the ground from what I've seen. Obviously, you want to talk about negatives for her. Watch the Jan Drover fight. That's the one that she did lose. I thought it was super close. I thought you could have gave it to Cavalcanti. Obviously, it was still early in her career. PFL Challenger Series, big spot. She gets hurt in round 1. I think Nunes could replicate that. I think that's Nunes' path here is to try and hurt her, bum rush her in round 1. I don't know if it's going to work. You gave her a lot of stuff for the Zara Farron fight, but she did get poked in the eye early in that fight. You go back and watch, she's literally squinting out of her eye the whole entire fight. I don't want to give her a straight up excuse, but even the post fight interview, bro, her eye looked like it absolutely got mangled. So props to her for sticking through that entire fight. Didn't want to quit, didn't want to look for a way out. Obviously finished the fight strong. In the third round, she was hitting the low kicks, hitting the jab. Still looks pretty clean to me, in my opinion. Go back to watch some of the fights that she had regionally as well. I went to go look. I wanted to see if she had fought any shorter opponents. She had, and she finished her via knee up the middle, which is what was hitting for Zara Farron. Because, Nunes is obviously going to have to close the distance here, right? She cannot sit at the outside. If she tries to sit at the outside here, Cavalcanti has a nice jab. She's going to pick her apart. She's going to sit at range, and she's going to just low kick her to death. And that'll be the fight because Nunes is a midget, and there's no way she could hit her from that far. So she has to get on the inside. And that's not something that is new to Nunes. Usually she is the smaller fighter. She had to do so versus Zara Farron. And when she did try versus Zara Farron early in the first round, she was getting kneed. She was getting bodied in the clinch. There was moments for Zara Farron. And then we saw, Farron just doesn't have the cardio. The later the fight goes, Nunes is able to take over. Another thing is the absolute abysmal ground game. Cavalcanti necessarily isn't offensive with the takedowns, but she's a lot younger fighter. And from what I have seen, I think her grappling could be an upside here, especially it looks to pass the position. Like Ramona Pasquale is straight trash. She's not, doing anything to pass the guard. She's completely gassed. Doesn't make Nunes pay for it. We're finally getting somebody who I think is a little bit higher level than some of these girls. Chelsea Chandler was able to take her down easily. So I don't think it's impossible for this girl. And on the feet, I actually think with the way that Nunes is going to be rushing forward, chin in the air, I think Cavalcanti's also by far the cleanest striker that she's fought. You go back and watch, like you said, 3-0 to the KO. Cavalcanti, she's got some sneaky power, man. I don't think she's a huge knockout artist, but I do think she has good low kicks, good knees up the middle in the clinch, and I think she's got sneaky power. And she's even finished the fight on the ground via strikes before. So go back and watch that fight maybe to look to see what happened on the ground there. Obviously, I don't think that was the highest level opponent, but Nunes ain't shit on the ground anyway. So it's possible we see a more aggressive Cavalcanti here. On the post-fight interview for her last fight, she said, next time you see me, this wasn't even the best that I could offer. I think you're going to see a new Jacqueline Cavalcanti, and I'm going to be more aggressive here. So I think she has no choice but to be aggressive here because I think Nunes is going to be rushing in. I don't like Nunes' defense on the way in. I think she's very hittable, and when you're running towards somebody, those on-point jabs that are snapping the head back of her opponent. Go back and watch Cavalcanti because I actually think her striking is good. And I think she, when she's even these jabs, even these just crosses, snapping the head back of her opponent, I think she could even possibly finish Nunes here. I know that sounds crazy. Usually we look at the over 2.5 for these women's fights, but fight ends by KO is sitting at plus 200. That's around 33%. And then you're giving most of that equity to Nunes because she's gotten the KO before, right, in the UFC. But Cavalcanti, man, never been finished. 3-0 to the KO. And I think she's the way better striker. Nunes defense doesn't impress me. Comes in very hittable. Cavalcanti's got the cardio, and even if this fight doesn't go to the ground, then it's a striking matchup for 3 rounds. Give me the more technical striker, and I don't think she's completely dead to a KO here. She's fought, I believe, also her last fight was at 140 pounds. This one's going to be at 135. So let's look at the weigh-ins. Let's see how these girls are looking, and I don't think Cavalcanti's dead to the KO. Everyone will be on the decision.
You know something, brother? You stole my thunder because that's exactly what I was going to say. Just looking at number one, the market prices, right? I think everybody's going to expect a decision. People got burnt a little bit that thought Chelsea Chandler had a chance to finish. I just think she's not very intelligent. No disrespect. I don't think she's a very dangerous fighter, all things considered, based on what we saw from her in the UFC. Her finishing instincts aren't really there when she doesn't have the chance to bully somebody like Stoliarenko, who gassed out horribly and just like quit essentially from the bottom position. She was getting hit bad in that one, so I'll give her credit. Like, she got to a good position, she dominated from there. But we saw like she had good positions against Nunes, wasn't even interested in advancing them, hasn't made weight her last 2 fights. Looks like she's, half in and half out on a career overall. 5-pound weight miss basically just says like, I don't give a fuck anymore about this career. Shout out to my guy Uncle Wheezy in the building, says respect, fellas. Breaking down fights at 3:40 a.m. is true commitment to the grind. You know that, brother. I still got, look at this, about half of a cup of coffee. I already finished this one, an hour ago. So we're still rocking. We're still keeping it going live, pushing, having a great time doing it. And my brother, my guest, if you ever need to say, hey, I'm fucking out of here, it's 3 a.m, you're a sicko, just tell me, brother, and I will cut you loose with no harm, no foul. But for me, dude, I could do this shit all night, and I appreciate the people that are rocking with us live. We got 282 people rocking with us live between X, Twitter. If you guys are there, guys, make sure that you're hitting that fucking follow button, right? Show a little love, show a little, a little bit of support to the guy. And then if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like on the video, because we're here at 3:41 local time, and we have no signs of slowing down. We got the fucking fireworks popping off for my guy JB, and you got your host still rocking with you live, drinking coffee at 3:41 to make sure we keep the takes sharp and fast. So in any case, guys, we're back at this fight, and here's what I have to say. Cavalcanti, right? Last time out, you said didn't put on the best performance. I poked some things I forgot about. This is why you have to revisit tape. It will reinvigorate some of these thoughts in your mind. But here's the other thing. Because one girl sold on the finish doesn't mean I'm going to write off the idea moving forward. I had basically said last time out, I picked Chandler. I bet Chandler. I thought she was the side. I picked her to win the fight. But when I looked at it, I was saying to myself, like, she's got a chance to knock her out, submit her, win by decision. Like, she's going to get to dominant positions. I say all the time, if you're in dominant positions and you have the submission edge, you could submit. And if you have the, positional edge to submit somebody, then you're in a position where you could grab their fucking wrist, put it behind their head, punch them 6 times, and the referee has to stop. So it's like, that for me is what I'm looking for, right? People that have these multiple ways to win the fight. Now, she's minus 215. Gross, right? I don't want to get there with a women's fight that's low level, that if these girls just exchange strikes, do I expect she'll win? Yeah, but could she get hit with one punch, fall over, change their trajectory of the round? Yeah, even if it's not a punch that lands particularly hard, knocks her off balance, hits her in the shoulder, she falls over. We know how women's MMA fights go. Close split decision, right? Like my guy said, it's cursed. It's doomed to be. It could be. But if it's a dominant win or finish, right? Josianne Nunes is going to have to throw fucking softballs 15 feet in the air to hit this girl, just based on her style, right? She's a very small fighter. And meanwhile, it's like, you've got this girl in Cavalcanti who you talked about. She's working on the ground and pound. She has a finish from the top position before. She's an aggressive fighter. Josianne Nunes is there to be controlled on the mat. So those are the times when you do have potential upside, right? Like, yeah, a shot to go out there and maybe surprise people, right? Zara Fair, 40 years old, couldn't put her away. But now I have another chance, another opportunity against a fighter with negative grappling, blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Here's what I could tell you. I scrolled for a long time on Cavalcanti's Instagram, and I found her in the gi in 2019. And what it says, January 27th, 2019, the only way to beat jiu-jitsu is learning jiu-jitsu. So this girl, I don't know that jiu-jitsu is her calling, right? I don't know if it's in her heart, but she wants to know it to prevent it from happening to her so she can win these fights. That makes me think that it's interesting that it's plus 650 or whatever for the sub. Meanwhile, it's 10-1 for the KO. I always talk about fighter preference. What would the fighter, if it's an ideal world, if you ask them in an interview, or something like that. What would you like to have happen here? If it was all perfect, right? Most of the time they'll tell you, oh, if I could draw this one up, it'd be a submission in the first round. I'd knock out in round 2. And it doesn't always go that way. But then it gives you an idea of like, okay, this is what the fighter is gunning for. This is what they want. Even in that last fight, Cody hadn't said, like, I heard him and I tried to punch him a few times. I realized he wouldn't go unconscious. So I just grabbed a hold of his neck. That's a guy that's like, I want to finish. I want to kill by any means necessary. My write-up said club and sub, not fucking he's going to go out there and try and, do jujitsu and grab a hold of it. No, I was like, this guy's tough as fuck. They're going to get into some exchanges. I was like, I've seen Billy Brand get hurt a little bit before. He takes a lot of chances. So if that happens here, this guy, he's not going to fucking play footsie with you and figure it out and let you get back up. And he's like, all right, 5 shots to try and put him away. And then it's wraps. That's it. Grab a hold of the neck. But if he has it to do again, he still wants to knock him out. He'd like if you ran it 5 times, he'd still try and TKO him on that first 3 shots every time, not go for the neck like a jiu-jitsu guy would right away. So it just shows you these kind of little interplays. What is the fighter's preference? Cavalcanti is telling you her fucking preference is to punch a hole through somebody's face, right? She wants to go out there and do damage. Not always common in WMMA. That's what she wants. And so I think it's a interesting spot where maybe she could go out there and look to be violent with Josianne Nunes. And Josianne Nunes is a good bully. She's good on top, good hammer, good at throwing shots. Can she take him? Can she take him if this girl's sitting on her chest, landing a bunch of ground and pound over the course of the fight? That for me is interesting. So, I'll be looking to see if there's some value on the props, but
yeah,
I think the right woman is favored in this one.
Remember too, in the last fight, Zara Farron, I believe the Cavalcanti by KO price was plus 200. I don't know. She might have been a way bigger favorite in that fight, but now we're going from plus 200 to 10 to 1. I just think it's way too big of a
wow, that's crazy.
a jump. I think likely decision, right? For Cavalcanti, I think Nunes is pretty tough, pretty good on the feet, but I think there's also KO upside. I love me some women's KOs, bro.
6-inch height advantage, 3-inch reach advantage, and 4 years younger for Jacqueline Cavalcanti. So a couple of anthropomorphic advantages, as we like to discuss on this show. But with that being said, guys, we've got a tough fight that has been added to the card. So I don't know if you've gotten a chance to watch either of these guys at all, my brother. If not, I'm happy to quickly run through their fights and talk about them from the bracket, right? So we're talking. Oh, please go. No. Go ahead, man.
I'll let you go for it because I didn't know these guys existed until about 3 hours ago. So I will, and that's about the time this show started. So I literally a half hour before this podcast, I saw that these fights were added. I realized it was from The Ultimate Fighter. I haven't watched a single episode of the season other than the one where Valentina wouldn't give him the water because I thought that was absolutely hilarious. My wrestling coach back in the day used to do that. You couldn't even drink, bro. If you were in the car on your way home and the coach saw you, nah, you couldn't drink that stuff. So my coach was for real. He wasn't playing that game, bro. No water. So everybody knocking on Valentina Shevchenko. You can't hate on her too much. It's a mental thing, right? But I actually think you should probably be hydrating if you're training. So, Liam, I'm gonna pass this one to you, my man.
Hell yeah, brother. Listen, this is first of all, drink water, guys. Fucking fuck what your coach tells you. Fuck
I'm about to go get
drink
some right now.
Soldier hours. You're a wise man. I got it right here. But when I'm looking at this fight, first of all, you've got Zigomantis Ramaska. If I look back at the bracket for the Ultimate Fighter, he fought Beksad Usmanov, guys. And Usmanov, I mean, Usmanov almost knocked him out, right? He hurt him very badly in the first round, and he was able to recover, right? He was able to get back up and keep fighting. And he basically won all the minutes of the fight and did some damage himself. He almost finished his opponent late in that first round. He started to land a lot of shots and bloody him up. Definitely the round of the season, right? In round 1. And then in round 2, he came out and just asserted himself, was able to win that round. Meanwhile, he then fractured his face and was not medically cleared to go on for the second fight. So that must have been from that first punch in round 1 when he got his himself dropped, right? He probably broke his face on that exchange. Cheers to everybody out there. Whatever you're drinking at this hour and rocking with us, I needed a sip of the old water. But in any case, on the other side, we saw Nathan Fletcher go out there and he lost to Kaan Ofli. And when he lost to Ofli, guys, I thought he showed a lot of heart. I thought he showed a lot of toughness. But what we also saw is he can be controlled physically, right? You could take him down, you can get on top of him. That's not really Zigomans's game. Zigomans's likes to operate long. He likes to strike from the outside. So I think that that's probably what we're going to see a lot of from him in this fight, trying to operate outside. And meanwhile, you're looking at a Nathan Fletcher who I thought had decent ideas of what he wanted to do on the ground. He was looking for the switch. He was looking to be offensive. He kept working to get back up to his feet. Problem was, man, he was just in there with a really good fighter, and he showed a lot of heart because in round one, Nathan Fletcher was mounted, bellied out. He was flat in the full, belly down. He just didn't give up. And honestly, Cain Ofli, I think, is the best guy on the season. So again, I could be proven wrong about that, but that's what it looked like to me from watching the footage. And Cain Ofli didn't finish him. He finished the other guy in fucking like a minute. It's like very easy finish for him. So I do think that this is the kind of spot where Nathan Fletcher, fun fighter, 26 years of age. He's coming out of England. I think that he's got some marketability behind him, fought in the Cage Warriors promotion. I don't know about the Wooding fight, though. Some people are asking about that. They don't think of Wooding as very good. Pick'em says Nathan Gass so bad against Wooding in round 3. Zigomantis, let's effing go, dog. Thursday, having a beer. You guys are awesome. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for rocking with us, my man. It's late here, but it's no reason to, give up on our breakdowns, right? We're heading into the final stretch. So overall, I think that, Zigomantis is a dangerous guy on the feet. He's fun. He showed his toughness. He's a big guy, showed his physicality. I think the guy who's probably more likely to try and take it to the ground is Fletcher. I don't have a great feel for, exactly how these guys size up. So there's, for me, a couple of questions going into this fight. Ramaska is probably going to be the bigger guy. He stands 5'11" compared to 5'8", and he's 1 year older here. It's interesting. It looks like this is a featherweight fight, but Fletcher used to fight at bantamweight. That would kind of make sense, man, because he looked a little bit smaller than some of these other guys. So maybe Zigomantis is just going to have some upside on size and physicality, but coming in off a fractured face, I can kind of understand why he's the underdog here. Fletcher, just on the fact he didn't get his face broken, is fine. I think Pick'em, he's making the same point I was. He was fighting at 135 in Cage Warriors. So that is important to note. He could be the smaller guy here. I don't have a very strong read on this fight. I think, I have to watch their old footage to get a better feel for these guys. Because again, it's not even like the guys in the main event of these tournaments, right? It's not like the guy who made it through the quarterfinal and the semifinal. It's like these guys both had one fight apiece. So it doesn't tell you as much about them. And I need to watch more footage to have a clear picture. But basically what I saw from Zigomantis, big guy. In fact, let me go back and look at the tweets that I put out so I can give you guys my specific thoughts, because I literally did every fight through the first 9 episodes. So what did I have? I had Ofli looks like a solid top player, passing, hard ground and pound, threatens with subs. Fletcher is tough, didn't quit when he was mounted and gave up the back. Showed better form in round 2 with the near rear naked choke. That's what I see. I'm glad I read the tweet. He almost got a rear naked choke on Ofli, who's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he kind of rushed it. He knew that there was short time. He jumped up on his back, looked to go for this, and then fell over the top. Ofli was able to retain his position, but you just saw he tried to put himself in a position to win, which I like to see, right? He knew I'm not going to win this decision, so I need to fucking do something right now to win the fight. Tried to hop on his back, tried to get creative and find a way to, manufacture a win. That was a cool look for him. Then we look back and his opponent in this one, Zigomantis, I said fight of the season so far, 100% overmatched on size from the first bell was Usmanov, right? He was way smaller, just like Fletcher is going to be in this fight. He's going to be smaller, not as small as Usmanov, but he's going to be smaller. And Usmanov still was able to hurt him really bad, right? Almost knock him out, hurt him very bad. Big knockdown, ended up sustaining so much damage to his face, though. At the end of round 1, if I had told you that the other guy got knocked down, you wouldn't believe it, because it was literally fucking gushing blood out of his face, his mouth, his nose, and he had just landed the knockdown. So you could just tell the writing was on the wall a little bit for Begzad. He was so damaged through one round. He stayed tough, tried to make it through, but he really had just been so badly damaged at that point. I think that this is a fight where, I don't put it past either guy to win. So I don't think there should be a huge favorite in this one. Just off gut instincts, but I'll look into it more. Not only are you breaking down this card early morning, JB is risking a bear attack on his porch. Truly
Ain't no
savage.
bears out here, bro.
We appreciate the dono. We appreciate the support, my man. The Texas Bears, you got to be wary of those. I think the biggest bear you might find on there is Zach Reese.
It's a
So you
wild
better be
boar,
careful,
bro.
dog.
We got wild boars. That's what we got out here.
If
Wild
Zach Reese
boars.
already is on the plane to Vegas, then I think you're straight up, bro. I think you're
I'm
straight.
good.
All love, all love. Appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much for the dono. And I believe the last fight on the card here, guys, is Cong Wang against Victoria Leonardo. If there was any other tough fights added, I'm not seeing them on Tapology. Please feel free to let me know in the chat. I'd be happy to address them if there are any other fights. But I don't know who on God's green earth Cong Wang is. I hope you do, brother. I've seen some stuff on Twitter. I've seen the line movement. At a certain point, you have to just say, like, I fucking clearly missed the boat on this, so I'm just letting it fly off into the distance at -1,000 or whatever it is. Do I think Victoria Leonardo is a fair fade? Yeah, I understand the impulse to fade Victoria Leonardo for sure. She's 1-3 in the UFC. The losses, I don't think they're terrible, but the win doesn't mean much, right? Beating Mandy Bohm doesn't tell you anything. Losing to Ferro, Gato, and Natalia Silva, I mean, those are 3 fucking solid women. Every one of them a winning record, I believe, in the UFC. So I don't really put that as like, wow, what an indictment of your career. She did get head kicked into the second dimension by our girl Erin Blanchfield on the regional scene. Not a bullish signal from her there. Lost to Miranda Maverick as well on the Phoenix series, as well as in a regular Invicta fight. So Victoria Leonardo is a girl that's tough, but clearly, flawed as a fighter. But I mean, losing to a bunch of really tough girls and then being a massive underdog against somebody I've never heard of is interesting. But I've also just seen Cong Wang fought Shevchenko back in the day in kickboxing. So clearly seasoned fighter on the feet, right? That's not going to be the problem. The question is, how's her grappling? She did get a submission win in Road to UFC in an exhibition last time out. And I don't mean exhibition like not a real fight. I mean exhibition like a showcase. It wasn't part of the Road to UFC tournament. Just, hey, here's some talent that we'd like to showcase. So that does tell me they're probably trying to put her in a winnable, good position here. But I mean, the price is disgusting. What do you think, my man?
Yeah, I got in at -600, bro, and the line's -1,000 now. So I guess I did my job. I just don't see the path to victory for this girl unless it's like some DQ somehow. But even then, I think Wang's got the experience. Obviously, yeah, I guess don't parlay -1,200, but I got it at -600, bro. So I got a little CLV there. I just don't see the path for Leonardo. I think Wang's way too physical for her to grapple her. And on the feet, I don't think it's even fair. I don't like the way Leonardo reacts to the strikes, even just her durability in general. Not just the chin durability, but gets kicked in the arm by Melissa Gatto, breaks her arm completely. Those high kicks are something that gives her trouble. Wang does have a finish.
I mean, breaking your arm isn't really fucking controllable, right?
I know. But and she tries
the
to fight through it,
technique. I mean, you don't want to take you don't want to take kicks on your arm for that reason, right? If you take fucking clean kicks,
like Cannonier, right? Cannonier versus Whitaker, you break your arm and that's it. And that's
block the high kick, break your arm.
Right. And then Wang does have the finish via high kick before. We've seen the high kick on Erin Blanchfield. So I do see the knockout path for Wang. A lot of people bet in the knockout. Could be a frustrating one, though, because she does have decision wins on her record versus girls who I've honestly never heard of. So is it possible that she doesn't drag this fight out? I don't think it's impossible that this fight goes to decision. I do think Wang is the way better striker. I think she's way more physical. I think the UFC probably is booking her to win here. Look at Leonardo's career. Has she been booked to win? No. So I don't think they're going to change their mind here. And yeah, exactly. I don't think they're going to change their mind here trying to get her a win. I think this is hey, who could we get Cong Wang? Maybe even a finish here for her first UFC fight. But I think it's dominating either way it goes, even if it's a finish or a decision. Know some sharp people on the KO, but haven't jumped in on it yet myself. And the price seems to be moving pretty rapidly. Everybody thinking Cong Wang going to get the finish. But, man, like I said, she's been a decision with girls who I've never heard of. And Leonardo, for what it's worth, she has the UFC experience. Maybe she's just tough enough not to get finished here. But I think it's Cong Wang by any method she wants.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely have to. I'm gonna have to look into the prop market. For the Cong Wang side. If I was to play that side, right, I'm not gonna look at the -1100. It's just not how I play the game. But I will say, with all the kickboxing credentials, with one loss for Leonardo by sub, to see the sub prop sitting at like plus 400 just feels like it's, you know, little low, you know, little telling. She got a sub in her last fight. She has 2 wins by submission.
Nasty sub too.
So, yeah, a couple things to watch out for there. You know, if you're laying the chalk on the KO, maybe you just buy up to that ITD and not, you know, be crying in your coffee if she goes out there and head kicks her and then fucking wraps up a choke or something.
Has Leonardo been subbed before?
She was submitted by Aaron Blanchfield. That was what I was. It was in a, or excuse me, by Aaron Blanchfield, by Miranda Maverick. She got head kicked by Blanchfield, but she also went to decision with her. So they did the Phoenix series bout and went to decision. But prior to that, they had fought and Miranda armbarred her in the first round. You know, and this girl's had a lot of fights, man. Leonardo's had a lot of fights. She's taken a lot of fucking damage. Not a good fighter. No disrespect. She's not a good fighter.
I agree.
So there you have it, guys. I think that if I had to give a quick recap of where I'm at on these fights, I'll do that by saying I think Cong Wang is going to win. She may finish. I don't know. I have to look into the fight deeper, but I predict that she is the right winner. I think the steam is good on that fight. But I also think, you know, it's gotten over its skis. You know, you don't want to just chase steam to minus 1200.
You know what that line opened, right?
Plus money, didn't it?
Yeah, dude.
Like plus 135 or something. I mean, listen, you have to understand they might have just said, hey, 1-3 in the UFC versus, 0-0 road to UFC. Road to UFC typically means not very good. But in this case, it's like in WMMA, road to UFC doesn't mean anything different than Invicta or anywhere. It's just some girl that we don't really know much about yet. And I think that Ice Viking saying, hey, got the minus 650, no problem. You beat the line, things like that. But I think it's at the point where it's just not value now, right? It's like should win, probably going to win, probably not value, right? Zygmanitis and Fletcher, I think that's just a fight that I have to do more research on, right? I've only seen one fight apiece from these two guys. If I had to make an early lean, I would think Fletcher by sub. But you know, I don't feel super bullish, and I think there's probably a world in which Zygmantis can be a live underdog. So I'll do some research. Then for the Josianne Nunes and Cavalcanti fight, I think Cavalcanti is the right side. Pre-tape. I think that Llontop is a dogger pass situation. I'm not a Slava believer. Haven't been. I thought Chase Hooper was going to audit him. He absolutely did that and more. So I think that the Medina is an interesting dog. I know a really sharp guy who's huge on Reese, which I was a little bit surprised by, but I guess that's why the line is where it's at. I'm going to look deeper into that fight, but for me, Medina just seems like a guy who's going to fight for your money at plus 400, and I don't know how much more you could ask for at those kind of prices. They're supposed to lose the fight on paper if they're that price, but it's like, does this guy have a path? It's like, yeah, we don't know if this guy can fight for 7.5 minutes. So for me, that's enough to at least get my interest peaked. Buzujka and Marshall seems like a forgettable, who knows type of fight. GM3, a live dog that's probably going to get smoked in round 1. So I would wait to bet him live if I like that side. He does not win round 1 at a high clip. Shahbazyan does not lose round 1s typically. And last fight out, he had some danger in round 1, but even then he fucking killed the guy. I think Kaan Ofli is the side, but I'll do more research, just based on watching the show. That's what I thought. I thought he was the best guy that I watched on the show. I thought Mairon Santos was put in a lot of negative positions. He's still young. He could still improve. 24 years of age, big guy physically, but ultimately some skills I think still need to be developed there, especially defensively in the grappling and, being a little bit more proactive. He's a very reactive fighter, I feel. Then you look at the Morales and Magny fight. I mean, it's a huge line. It's a dogger pass situation on the money line, but I think Michael Morales is a physical hoss. I think he could absolutely dominate the grappling and the wrestling with Neil Magny based on his physicality alone. So for that reason, I'm going with Michael Morales. I think he should finish him. I think that Loder and Valentin is an interesting fight. I think Loder is the much more conservative party. He might go out there and try and wrestle, push this guy into the fence, make it a slow fight. but I just think that Valentin's a more dangerous guy. I think he's got more paths to finishing the fight. He showed a submission game, crazy armbar on that show. He also showed some power. He showed some finishing instincts. Anytime he had an opportunity to close the show, he did just that. So I think that Valentin is the guy the UFC is hoping comes out of this. But Ryan Loder is like a cut rate Chris Weidman, All-American, smiling white guy, goes out there, looks like a clean-cut guy, goes out there, puts on a fight, seems like a role model type guy. It just does the right things and seems like a generic fill-in-the-blank type of UFC guy, Man of Steel. They could put a lot of All-American, the Man of Steel. They just, that kind of guy. But does he project to me as like this great fighter? He doesn't really. He seems to me like a guy who's knows where his bread is buttered. He can wrestle. He can, exert himself on top of guys that aren't there physically. But when he was seeing a guy that could resist him a little bit, he was very, very conservative in that fight. And I just don't think Valentin's like that at all, right? Even against McCrory, when he got hurt, he said, fucking get over here, grabbed a hold of him, whipped him to the ground with crazy aggression. He's always fighting at 100 miles per hour. So I think the danger for him is if this gets deep, right? Shout out to Moyes. He says Loder round 3. I think if you're on the Loder side, you're hoping he shows up late in this fight. Hey, take him out late or get the decision, keep working. But for me, I just think Valentin, the guy who's going to be more dangerous, more aggressive early. I think that Angela Hill and Tabatha Ricci being lined closely makes a lot of sense to me. I see Ricci as having some grappling upside. I see Hill as being the better striker on the feet. I see a decision as probably being very close unless there's, 3 to 5 takedowns from Ricci. So it just seems to me like an honest fight. I'll have to look in the prop market there. I don't feel compelled to get on either side. And for Cannonier and Borralho, I'm a huge Caio Borralho fan, but right now you're being asked to pay, similar to the highest prices. He's been like minus 550 against some of the worst dregs he's fought in the UFC. But basically, you're being asked to pay a pretty steep chalk price when I've gotten him at dog odds before in the UFC against the best competition he's ever fought. And I think that Jerry Cannonier probably passed his sell-by date at 40 years of age, coming off a knockout loss 2 months back. But he's still a tough guy. He's still a serious fighter. He's still ranked in the top of this division. And he hasn't been outed in the grappling by anybody. So I think if anybody could do that to him, maybe it is Caio Borralho. Maybe he's the first best grappler that he's fought since Glover Teixeira, since Jack Hermanson, since David Branch, these guys that maybe didn't have the same physicality. Or maybe like Glover Teixeira, he was willing to box. He was a little bit older, just different point in his career, different kind of fight, 205, whole different story. I think that Caio could wrestle and grapple him, but if he's not able to get off on that game on the feet, I would favor Cannonier. He throws a huge amount of volume in that Marvin Vettori fight. I think it would be close. It would not be easy to get off volume on Caio Borralho, but could you back him up a little bit, maybe make him second guess himself and, land more over the course of 25 minutes? I think that's possible. So I see Cannonier as having passed the victory. I see him as a live underdog, but ultimately I think situationally it's a tough fight for him. Do you have any summary thoughts that you want to give on this fight before you get out of here, my brother?
On the main event?
Just on the card in general, if you wanted to summarize your thoughts or if you have anything you wanted to add for the people. I know we've been rocking for a long time, so don't want to you too long, my brother.
Nah, not too long. Never too long for me. The people, they'll watch it. They'll go back, especially if they're sharp and they want to win some money. So I see some comments talking about Leonardo by DQ. Get that energy out of here. I got Wang parlayed at minus 600. I need a W here, guys. Let's just chill out. You know what? Maybe not 2 now, but maybe 1 too many beers. We can't have that happening this week. I think Leonardo, she's getting whacked out of here. So she's done, I think, and we get the job done this weekend. Hopefully we could come up some units, look for some profit. Like I said, I already got some parlays going, but I also want to look for these other spots as well. And now I'm excited to look at these Contender Series fights. I mean, not Contender Series, some of the Ultimate Fighter fights that you had already recapped. I'll go be able to look at your post. Go follow both of us on Twitter, or X as you call it. Got me at MMA Line Mover and at Liam Picks Fights. Some good content there as well. So hopefully we covered everything we could cover here, and I'm ready to get this money, my man.
Hell yeah, brother. I appreciate you making the time. I appreciate you being here. I think that we did a great job talking about the fights today, and I hope that people can learn something from it. What I can promise you guys is we'll be back later in the week In terms of, I certainly have some content planned myself in terms of the bets and banter. Going to have a great special guest for you guys. We'll figure out exactly who and when we're rocking. So stay tuned for announcements. If you guys don't already, follow me on X at Liam Picks Fights, because I announce a lot of things about my shows, my streams, things like that on there. However, if you want to make sure I'm never, oh, Liam, the live stream, I missed it. I didn't know what was happening. Hit the notification bell, guys. I'm telling you, people tell me every week, I missed when you went live. I'm not a great planner, but what I am is going to be here. And when I'm here, I'm going to give you everything I've got. I'm going to talk through every fight. I'm going to try and find winning angles, and we're going to be fully transparent. So, Contender Series, took a couple shots on dogs, didn't go my way. On the UFC over the weekend, took a couple shots on dogs. It turned out great. My guy Dan Hooker came through. I posted the video of that. Fucking, absolute revenge for RDA. Scam rot was exposed. Very happy when shit like that goes well for us. We've had a good year so far, but it's not up to our standard. It's not up to our goals. So never let your goals not match your habits. I'm going to be up all night doing work, doing research. I'm going to be sending it all on Patreon like I always do. But for me, I had a pretty solid read on Contender Series. I feel good about that. What I didn't have was the right result. So I'm back to work. I'm back to doing the same things, process over results, but I still want the results to match. I still want the results to match the effort, the energy, the intensity. So for me, I think there's a lot of fun spots on this card, but I'm going to dig in. I'm going to make sure I do my due diligence before I fire. And then if I feel good about it, I'm going to write it up. I'm going to make sure if you write well, you think clearly. That's why it's so hard. Most of my best bets have very clear, clean write-ups that go right alongside them for why they happen the way they happen. So for me, that's what I'm looking to do this week, is make sure, do I believe in this? Do I feel it? Do I see it 10 different ways to Sunday? Can I write down all the different reasons and feel good about it? If I can, I'm going to bet it. If I can't, I'm not going to do it. So for me, I'm excited. I'm fired up. Here's the other thing that we have to look forward to, guys. Next week, Contender Series, right? We're pushing. There's a week off from UFC, but we still got Contender Series action. And let me tell you what I'm excited for. Nick Piccinini. I could tell you guys, I was there in the stands watching him get that arm raise for the state title. Nick Piccinini has been wrestling fucking gold in the state of New York since he was doing the damn thing in high school. 6-0 as a professional. He's getting his chance. It's on short notice next week on Contender Series. I don't know shit about his opponent. But one thing I do know is this boy, Nick Piccinini, is from New York, and them New York boys will teach you how to wrestle. Once again, remember the name, Nick Piccinini. He's coming for fucking blood next week on the Contender Series. And by blood, I mean a rear naked choke. He's going to try and wrestle his ass off. You're going to try and choke this guy silly. That's what he does in every fight. He's a good wrestler. He's very solid with that Oklahoma State background. He pinned Spencer Lee. Do I need to repeat myself? Okay. He is that fucking guy. So when you look back at the history books and they say, hey, who beat Spencer Lee? Who is that guy from Oklahoma State that fucking pinned his ass? Nick Piccinini from the great state of New York, baby. We're coming for everything. So thank you guys for the support. God bless and good luck for all your action for UFC this weekend. God bless and good luck, Nick Piccinini. Go get one for the great state of New York next week. And in the meantime, guys, tons more coming out on Patreon. Tons more coming out for Bets and Banter later this week. God bless. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon. Take care, guys.